In the 21st year of the Satsio calendar, a horrific catastrophe struck the Jianvan kingdom. The scene was pure bloody chaos, and the survivors were beginning to lose their composure. Their faces were etched with panic and dread. Outside, monsters had surrounded humanity's final fortress where the remaining survivors had gathered. The soldiers tried to push reality aside. They rallied together with a glimmer of faint hope, but the most terrifying thing had yet to appear. A roar accompanied by the sound of savage flapping grabbed everyone's attention. Before them stood countless giant monsters with overwhelming pressure flying straight toward them. Soon after, one massive beast slowly gathered magic power in its mouth and unleashed a blast directly forward. The target was the crowd below. The attack was enough to wipe out everything, smashing the fortress's sturdy gate into pieces. The monsters outside seized the moment. They flooded in like a storm, weapons in hand, threatening everyone inside. Lives were being snatched away more easily than ever. The giant beasts. With every move, they crushed those tiny lives. An unavoidable destiny was unfolding right before our eyes. They crept into every corner of the fortress. It caused the soldiers to flee in a panic. The bodies of fallen soldiers were scattered everywhere, yet the monsters continued their hunt for humanity. Just as humanity faced total annihilation amidst the smoke and fire, a voice filled with anxiety and urgency rang out. Nearby, the next ones lying there were soldiers. Luckily, they were rescued in time. Everyone was seriously wounded, and those who were still intact took turns caring for them. One soldier with a pale complexion was being treated. The hurried voice of the other person rang out again. That person was Quill. He looked at everyone and shouted, "I will heal you. Bring the wounded over here quickly." Another person was brought over. He quickly knelt and cast a healing spell to treat him. Quill kept urging them, "Before it's too late." An underling nearby saw this and tried to stop him. "Master Quill, the gate is about to be breached. Please run away." He couldn't help but feel anxious seeing the danger so close. A healer of his caliber shouldn't be on the front lines. Hearing those words made Quill furious. He turned and barked at him, "You're telling me to abandon them." He gritted his teeth, fully aware of the responsibility on his shoulders. As long as he kept healing, he wouldn't let humanity go extinct. That moment caused Quill to recall his parents' advice words about his duty to the world and the power he held in this world. Everyone's lives depend on you. From now on, you are the greatest healer in the world. Suddenly, an urgent call pulled him out of his thoughts. "Master Quill, there are 2 people at the door looking for you," someone called out loudly. "Where is Master Quill?" He followed the voice. In front of him stood the majestic general, his arm severed, his breathing growing weak. He couldn't help but gasp, "General!" But he quickly said, "Lay him down here." As soon as he was laid down, the soldier hurriedly asked Quill, his voice filled with anxiety, "Can you save the general?" "Without him, this front line will face." Quill answered quickly with a firm voice, "I will save him." He dropped to his knees and cast his magic. Everyone around was worried. The air was thick with tension, yet he said with certainty, "That is the reason I am here." Quill quickly gathered magic around himself and the general. A blue magic circle appeared beneath them, and suddenly a pillar of blue light erupted, stunning everyone present. That energy enveloped the general's missing arm, slowly restoring it. The joints, fingers, and even the flesh that had been bitten off were gradually recovering. After the arm was restored, the blue light slowly faded. The general opened his eyes and woke up sitting up with his arm fully healed. The soldiers nearby cheered, "As expected of Master Quill, the general is awake." He stared blankly at his once severed arm now without a single wound. Seeing this, Quill smiled in relief and said, "No matter how severe the injury is, I will heal it all. Now humanity's victory is surely within reach." The general didn't answer him, but just stared fixedly at his own hand, his pupils trembling. Suddenly, he threw a punch straight into Quill's face. He didn't have time to dodge and took the full force of the blow. The general gripped his own arm until his knuckles turned white, his voice frustrated. "You just did something useless." The soldiers there and Quill were stunned, not understanding the situation. After taking the hit, Quill clutched his face and looked at him. "What? Why did you hit me?" A brave soldier spoke up. "General, what the hell are you doing?" But the general looked even more enraged. He shouted, "Shut your mouth!" His hand nimbly drew the sword from his waist. Quill was stunned to see that action. The general stabbed his sword deep into Quill's shoulder, making him scream in pain. The general's crazed expression along with his words terrified him. The general's eyes flashed with frightening killing intent. "Was it this arm?" "Why won't you let me die?" The general pressed the sword harder into his shoulder, making him tremble in pain. He screamed, his voice filled with fear and despair. "What the hell do you understand, you who only knows how to stand back and heal? Our pain, the despair of facing those monsters." He glared fiercely at Quill, gnashing his teeth. "Just when I thought it was finally over." "You healed me again. How many more arms do we have to lose?" he said, gesturing toward the soldiers, his voice carrying resentment and exhaustion. "Everyone here feels the same. They don't want to fight anymore." At this moment, Quill finally turned his gaze toward the soldiers. His eyes widened in shock. All around him were wounded soldiers with not a single intact place left on them. Some people had broken arms, some were blind, and others were sprawled all over the place, utterly exhausted and in pain. Right now, panic was written all over Quill's face, and he couldn't stop replaying the general's words in his head. "No way. I saved as many people as I possibly could." "You mean everything I've done has meant nothing?" A brutal, painful truth slapped him right across the face, making his physical injuries feel like absolutely nothing as he realized the general was right. All that sweat, hard work, and tears, and even dragging himself all the way out here to the front lines, everything was for nothing. At that moment, the general finally yanked his sword out of Quill's shoulder, making him grit his teeth in agony. The general sneered at him. "Even if you're the greatest healer in the entire world, I couldn't care less. Putting up with you for this long has been more than enough." The general turned his back and started to walk away, throwing back a final parting shot. Humanity is going to go extinct anyway. "If you want to fight, go do it yourself!" Quill called out to him frantically, but his voice cracked with pure terror. How on earth was he supposed to use attack magic when he was just a healer? Without him here, this place would, but the general no longer cared about the life or death of humanity. He just turned his back and walked away. Right at that moment, the dragon outside let out a ferocious roar. A massive fireball condensed inside its jaws, and with a deafening blast, it slammed straight into the fortress, reducing nearly everything to rubble. The room where Quill was staying was completely blown apart, the walls shattering as dust filled the air. A massive chunk of debris crushed the general's body, leaving him gasping for breath as he desperately wheezed, "Run!" But then another heavy weight crashed down on top of him, making him scream out in agony. Finally, everything erupted into an explosion. Quill opened his eyes and forced himself to look around, and that was when it finally hit him. The dragon landed right in front of him, flapping its wings and growling viciously. As Quill stared at the creature before him, the delayed realization hit him like a ton of bricks. So this was the kind of monster that the very people he had saved were forced to fight against. He let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh, his eyes welling up with utter despair. It was true, all this time he had only ever known how to stand back and watch from the sidelines. Quill pressed his hand tightly over the wound on his shoulder, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. Damn it! All those years spent mastering healing magic, completely wasted. Memories flooded into his mind all at once, leaving him completely overwhelmed. Even with his natural genius for healing magic, even after being honored as the greatest healer in the world, he gritted his teeth, anger and helplessness surging up inside him. He should have been down there fighting with his own two hands. In that split second, Quill grabbed a rock from the ground. Even knowing he couldn't win, he charged forward anyway, silently regretting everything in his heart. If only he could go back to that day, Quill. He sprinted toward the monster, gripping the tiny rock tightly, his face set with fierce determination. I'll definitely... But there were no miracles. The dragon lunged straight at Quill. All that was left were two words, if only. And then his life was swallowed whole by the beast. Those wandering thoughts simply drifted away, blending together with his swirling, chaotic emotions. Suddenly, Quill opened his eyes again and bolted upright. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the painfully familiar surroundings that instantly froze him in place. Where am I? He turned his gaze toward the desk beside him. Academy Enrollment Guide. If this thing is here, that means Quill couldn't believe his eyes. He scrambled out of bed and rushed outside. Before him was a peaceful scene with people chatting loudly and cheerfully. Could this really be? 5 years ago to the day, he stood frozen in place, utterly dumbfounded, staring blankly ahead. He seemed to have traveled back to the 16th year of the Sozazio calendar, the exact day when Quill, the boy who would later become the greatest healer in the world. He looked around in a daze. He was supposed to have died under the claws of a dragon inside an academy specialized in training healing mages. Yet this was 1 week before his enrollment at the Quad Academy, the exact day he held his acceptance letter in his hand. With a tired tone, he muttered, "I have no idea what the hell even happened." The final fragments of memories from his past life flickered in his mind like a warning. But if his dying wish had actually been granted, then he knew damn well what he needed to do. He gripped the acceptance letter tightly, a look of fierce determination crossing his face. With a firm, unwavering voice, he declared, "I'm definitely going to enroll in the Combat Magic Academy instead." Quad Academy! Quill stood in silence, lost in thought. In a world where healing mages couldn't use attack magic that was an absolute law of nature, something every single mage knew by heart. I'm going to shatter that prejudice once and for all. There were bound to be countless hurdles standing in his way, and as those thoughts from his past life flashed through his mind again, he reminded himself, I still have the memories of my previous life, along with the top-tier healing magic I mastered back then. If I make full use of all of it, I can definitely change the future. Driven by absolute resolve and determination, he quickly set a clear goal for himself. A fierce glint of certainty flashed in his eyes. I'll do it with my own strength and save this world. To kick off his plan, the very first thing Quill thought about was school. First and foremost, he absolutely had to enroll in Quad Academy, the top institution in the world for training combat magic. There were a lot of things Quill remembered about Quad. Its extraordinary training program was rumored to be capable of turning literally anyone into a full-fledged battle mage. The person he met in his past life had also come from Quad, but then he remembered their training methods were top secret, and you could only learn them once you got inside. The biggest problem that was weighing on Quill's mind was his status as a healer. He closed his eyes and tried to think. There had probably never been a single precedent of a healer enrolling there. What was he supposed to do now? Then an idea suddenly popped into his head using money. Quat could allegedly train anyone into a top-tier combat mage, and he had heard that nobles occasionally used cash to buy their good-for-nothing kids a spot. But that thought was instantly crushed because he had just reincarnated. Where on earth was he supposed to get that kind of money? He looked around his room with a regretful sigh. If only I could have brought my money back from my past life. Even though money was useless when humanity was ending, the bounty rewards I earned working for the kingdom would have been enough to last a lifetime. Realizing he was backed into a corner, he started to panic even more. Even if he went out to work right now, he wouldn't make it in time for admissions. Think! Suddenly, a gentle voice called out to him. Quill, are you awake yet? A beautiful girl walked into the room, flashing a warm smile toward him that left him utterly stunned. Sis. Tears suddenly welled up in his eyes as he stared at her just a fraction longer than usual. That's right. I'm really back in the past. At that moment, she was still alive, and seeing him like that, she couldn't help asking with surprise, What's wrong? Do you have a stomachache? Qui flusteredly waved his hands and quickly explained, No, I just got a little speck of dust in my eye. Good morning, big sis. Hearing that, she flashed a sweet smile and replied, Good morning. He stared at her for a long time as a new thought sparked in his mind. In this lifetime, I will definitely prevent the tragedy that befell her because with my healing magic, I can save the people I couldn't save before. Suddenly, he exclaimed, That's it! Kwai grinned from ear to ear with excitement, grabbed her hands and smiled foolishly. Thank you so much. Thanks to you, I've figured out a solution. Her reaction left her baffled, and she asked, What is it? But Chu didn't explain, just hurriedly dashed away while shouting, I'm heading out for a bit. I'll tell you all about it when I get back. She let out a helpless sigh. Oh boy, make sure to come back for dinner. The Magic Academy Alliance, an organization overseeing all magic academies in the kingdom and making all decisions regarding magic education at the time. The president of the alliance was also holding the position of principal at Quad Academy. However, starting from a certain point in time, the president stopped showing up at the alliance. The reason shifts to a massive grand castle where moonlight streams in as Alnizam sits by Maji's bedside. Her face is flushed red from a high fever. He gently places his hand on Maji's uncomfortable face, his eyes filled with deep worry and tenderness. Magi. Owner Hot A is the president of the Magic Academy Alliance and principal of Quat Academy, Al-Nizam Gongyan. Al-Nizam's eyes turned sorrowful and bitter. I'm sorry, my child, even today my skills just aren't good enough. But I will definitely find someone who can cure your illness, so please just hang in there a little longer. Back at that time, The president always had to stay by the bedside to take care of his gravely ill granddaughter. Yet the healing magic of that era couldn't cure her no matter what. He sat by Maji's bed sobbing, and eventually the little girl passed away. But that was a thing of the past life. Now, Kui leaped up onto the windowsill and called out, "Leave it to me, all right?" Looking at the unfamiliar young man, he looked suspicious. "Are you Al-Nizam?" Immediately recognized him. "If I remember correctly, you're Q, the student on a scholarship from L. Wright." He vaulted in through the window. "You even know who I am." Raising his hand, the old man began to explain. "Your reputation for healing magic talent has already spread all across the Alliance, though I didn't expect you to be the type to break into houses through windows." Hearing that, he raised a hand to scratch his head awkwardly, thinking to himself, "The old me definitely never would have done this. I guess it's because I've died once already. So I feel a lot bolder now." He turned straight to the main point. "There's no time left, neither for her nor for me." He stretched his hand out toward Magi with absolute confidence. "I can cure her." Al-Nizam looked at him with suspicious and guarded eyes. "What are you plotting?" He reached out anxiously. "We can talk about that later. First, please let me treat her. Her illness has progressed much further than I thought." His eyes were filled with deep worry and determination. Facing Al-Nizam's probing gaze, the old man finally agreed, making him breathe a sigh of relief. "Fine, let's see what you can do." Sitting opposite each other by Maji's bed, Q's face looked a bit tense as he looked across at Al-Nizam, who was staring right at him with an intensely piercing gaze. That look was genuinely terrifying. It felt as though the old man was ready to send him straight to the afterlife at the slightest hint of a mistake. Talk about the aura of a Battle Magic Academy principal. He took a deep breath to steady himself and then cautiously picked up Magi's hand. A stream of healing light erupted, blanketing the entire room. Kyo concentrated intensely while casting the magic, thinking, "My magical power has dropped since I came back, but I still remember the formulas for healing magic clearly." Seeing Magi's complexion gradually improving, the formula to treat the Zora disease for this child was supposed to be invented 2 years from now. But with his current abilities, she slowly and gently opened her eyes. Chu let out a long breath of relief. "Thank God." He broke into a bright smile. "You're going to be okay now." Gazing at his handsome face, she instinctively blushed. "Your stamina is still low, though, so just rest up for now." Shyly turning her face away, she replied softly, "Yes." Al-Nizam asked anxiously, "Magi, do you really feel better?" Magi flashed a joyful smile and replied, "Yes, Grandpa. I can't even remember how many years it's been since I felt this healthy." His eyes welled up with tears as he looked at her full of affection, leaning over to stroke her head. "I see." Bright moonlight poured through the window. "Thank goodness." Scene change. Q and Al-Nizam are sitting down to talk in the living room. "Thank you, Chu. If there is anything I can do for you, I will do my absolute best." Without hesitation, he replied, "Thank you very much, but this isn't a favor request." He made his demand, "As you can see, my healing magic has reached the level of a grandmaster now. There's nothing left for me to learn in this field." He placed his hand on his chest and answered firmly, "So please let me enroll in the academy." The old man asked back, looking quite troubled, "You want to enter the Combat Magic Academy instead of using your talent for healing. Do you even understand what that means?" He replied with unwavering determination, "Of course I understand." Al-Nizam looked into Queel's longing eyes. Those eyes. The old man suddenly stood up, startling Queel. "Perhaps my authority exists exactly for a day like today." Seeing the determination on Quill's face, he spoke up. "I will make it happen." Both stood up and shook hands. "I grant you admission." Quill gripped his hand tightly, feeling incredibly resolute. The scene shifts to a room. A man is talking to himself. "That damn old fox. I thought he had just returned. Who would have thought he'd pull such a shocking stunt?" He picked up a piece of paper. A healer. Trying to keep up with the curriculum at Quad, a coddled healer like that. That paper was Queel's enrollment form recommended by Al-Nizam. On the opening day, a multitude of students stood in the school courtyard. Standing on the podium was Al-Nizam with a stern expression. Quat Academy is the one and only boarding school specializing in combat magic, with a massive campus containing countless training grounds, laboratories, and even a giant library. It has influential alumni outside the academy walls, and with full support from the kingdom, there is no better environment to learn combat magic. No healer has ever enrolled before, so surely countless difficulties await. But if I study here, Quill smiled with hope, thinking, I can definitely become a combat mage too. The deaths of his friends and comrades, memories from his previous life flashed before his eyes, and finally the death of his own self right in this very place. Now his life has begun a new chapter. As for his own destiny after enrolling, during class, Quill's face was twisted in frustration, completely different from the bright expression he had earlier. The professor stood nearby and shouted, "Begin!" He raised his hand toward the dummy and yelled. A magic circle appeared in his palm and flames surged out with it. It felt like mana was gathering, and then Quill shouted loudly. But the fire didn't blast out as expected. Around his palm there was only smoke and more smoke. Contrary to the laughter from the other students, the professor just calmly remarked, "You've failed again today." He then sternly issued a punishment. "Until you can shatter that target with basic combat magic, don't even think about coming to class. Go to the training ground behind the building and practice on your own." Hearing this, he complained loudly, "Sir, can't you teach me how to do it properly? At this rate, I don't even know how I'm supposed to practice." He pushed up his glasses and said coldly, "Teaching a healer is just a waste of time." But even so, Quill didn't give up and offered another idea. Then, "At least allow me to study the theory in the library." The man remained indifferent and replied, "There are no books here for a low-class healer. If you disobey, you will be punished." While the two were arguing, someone summoned fire magic and smirked, then threw the flame at his back. "Move!" Quill fell face first to the ground. He struggled to prop his trembling body up and asked, "What the hell was that?" In return, he got nothing but contempt from the perpetrator. "You couldn't even dodge that." Unput let out a smug laugh and offered some instruction. "This is a combat magic academy. There's no room for someone too weak to even protect themselves." He looked down and sneered. "In other words, getting hit is your own fault." Quill couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. The professor laughed and added, "Unput is right. Wouldn't it be better if you just quit and went to the Healing Magic Academy?" Seeing him agree, Unput's attitude became even more brazen. "Go there and ask those gentle healers to comfort you." Amidst his mocking laughter, he just silently frowned in annoyance. Late at night on the training ground, Quill sat on a bench, letting out a long sigh. He looked up and muttered to himself, "There's no sign that I can learn combat magic, even in this situation." Quill wasn't very surprised. He knew it would be difficult. The reason is that healing magic and combat magic use different sources of power. Magic is the transformation of mana, the user's mental energy through formulas to activate magic, and the nature of mana is determined by the state of that person's mind. Combat magic uses active mana to create fire or cause explosions, while healers only have passive mana and cannot use them. But Quat has the secret to training top-tier combat mages from scratch. Among those methods, there must be a way to train active mana. I'm quite confident in my ability to control mana, so if I can learn that technique. I thought I would be able to convert passive mana into active mana, but thinking back on this afternoon, I felt a bit helpless. I couldn't believe I wasn't even allowed into the classroom. Do all the students and even the teachers despise Heller to this extent? Then I snapped out of it and blurted out, "No, I can't give up." The image of that girl appeared in my mind. She once said their mana reserves were small at first, but they honed it at the academy. Choosing the academy was definitely the right move. I rested my chin in my hand, racking my brain for a plan. Blindly rushing in is useless anyway. I'm not allowed in the library yet. Should I just sneak in? Suddenly someone shouted, "Hey, you! What are you doing out here at this hour?" I jumped out of my skin and stammered, I'm sorry." I rubbed the back of my head, feeling embarrassed, and turned around. My eyes widened in shock as a breeze brushed past. The sound of boots clicked against the quiet floor. Beneath her white hair, those blue eyes peeked out. Finally, her face was revealed under the moonlight. I stood there dumbfounded. Veronica. How did I know her? Because in my past life we fought side by side on the battlefield. She was a top-tier offensive mage, and in the end we had to say goodbye in a truly painful way. My heart swelled with joy. I never expected to meet her again in this life. How nostalgic. Her magic blade could slice through anything in the blink of an eye. As soon as I thought that, I panicked and shouted out loud due to the current situation. "Wait, she's drawing her sword." Hearing that, Veronica naturally replied, "There's a suspicious student here." So of course I had to be on guard. She started questioning me. "What are you doing? Looking for trouble or just training?" Inside, I was calculating. She's not like those bullies from before. I absolutely cannot let myself get beaten up here. I quickly waved my hands. "I'm just training, I swear." Only then did Veronica sheath her sword. "Good." We started talking back and forth. You're Veronica, right? That's me, but she offered a reminder. Do you always address your teacher so casually? I instinctively apologized, then realized, I'm sorry, teacher. In my past life, she wasn't much older than me. Seeing her skeptical expression, she explained, I skipped grades, so I became a teacher right after. Starting this year. I scratched my cheek and replied, I see. But inside I was thinking, with Professor Veronica's talent, that makes perfect sense. My eyes gleamed with determination. This is my chance. I want her to teach me offensive magic, but I don't know if this plan will actually work. I decided to be blunt. I want to enroll in your class, Professor Veronica. What do I need to do to join? Veronica placed a hand on her chest and politely declined. Sorry. I haven't been assigned a specific class yet. I skipped so many grades that I rarely attend regular classes. This year, I'm just a teaching assistant. To answer students' questions, they thought having someone of a similar age would make students feel more comfortable, but she looked puzzled. I don't understand why no one ever comes to ask me anything. I could only force a smile. I knew exactly why they were all too terrified to ask. Everyone must be scared of her pull the sword at any moment attitude, but this is an even better opportunity. I can freely ask Professor Veronica for guidance, thinking that I felt even more motivated. In that case, can I ask you something? Veronica calmly accepted. Sure, that is my job after all. I asked seriously, I'll be straight with you. In your opinion, what does a spearman need to do to master offensive magic? She fell silent, deep in thought. Suddenly her eyes flashed with a sharp intensity. I sensed something strange about your mana flow. So you're the new student everyone's been talking about. I was surprised that someone like Veronica knew. You know about me. Of course. A spearman trying to learn offensive magic that's rare. I've never heard of such a thing. I steered the conversation back to the main point. But I heard the Academy has a method to refine active mana from scratch. If that method really exists, even I could use active mana. Veronica turned away and delivered the good news. That method does exist and I can teach you. Naturally, I was thrilled. Really then? But she interrupted, however. Veronica felt the need to be clear. It's still impossible for you to use offensive magic. The passive mana in your body is already too vast. At this level, even if you manage to refine your active mana, it's just going to dissolve into that mass of passive mana anyway. No matter what other method you use to refine your active mana, once it's mixed with passive mana, your offensive spell formulas won't be able to function properly. I couldn't just give up, so I asked, is there really no other way? Is there truly no way for a healer to use offensive magic? And the answer I got was, as far as I know, there isn't. That such a promising option was discarded made me feel terrible. Damn it, my whole plan is falling apart. But I can't just give up here. If there's no way, I'll create one myself. But then I put on a calm smile to say goodbye. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'll just have to think about this some more on my own. But as I turned to leave, she spoke up suddenly. Hold on, I wasn't finished. It's true that a healer can't use offensive magic, but there is still a way for a healer to become an offensive mage. I felt a bit confused and asked, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that? Veronica gave an example. This is an iron sword. If you swing it, you can strike down and defeat an enemy. Her hand brushed over the back of a chair as she suddenly proposed a hypothetical. And this is a wooden chair. You sit on it. Even though I didn't understand, I replied, yes. Unexpectedly, Veronica lifted the chair effortlessly. But even this chair... If you swing it and use it to bash someone, you can knock them down, too. Right. It sent a chill down my spine. Did she really do that with those thin arms of hers? Setting the chair down, she continued to instruct. You don't think of using it that way because it was made for a different purpose. But you have the freedom to use it however you want. These hands are the same. Veronica gently stroked my flushed face. I can caress your head gently like this. Her fingers lightly grazed my lips, and then she flicked my forehead very decisively. Or I can make you hurt. Seeing my sharp reaction, she asked curiously, sorry about that. Did I go a bit too far? I winced and replied, no, it's fine. Finally, Veronica summarized, the point is how you use it. Anything can become a weapon depending on how you wield it. I seemed to realize something. Could it be using healing magic to attack? She nodded, satisfied at how quickly I caught on. When a student asks, the teacher provides the answer. Strange, isn't it? What is? I'd never thought of it that way until you said it. That's just down to the nature of one's mindset and the difference in innate mana capacity. That is why offensive mages have no interest in healing magic and vice versa. But you are perhaps different. The fact that you actively enrolled in the Offensive Magic Academy already proves you're an exception. In reality, your mana isn't like that of a pure healer. Hearing that, I looked at my own palms in thought. Not like one I didn't even realize that myself. But could it be because I regressed? A sword was drawn and placed right next to my neck. You need to reevaluate it. Veronica's words carried a sense of gravity. The intense desire to fight deep inside you, if you can harness that, your healing magic will surely crush any enemy. After a night of tutoring like that, time slowly passed. The next day, while standing on the training grounds, I couldn't help but remember what Veronica said last night. The way she used those examples was truly unique, but it felt like I'd just been enlightened. Why doesn't Veronica have any prejudice against healers? It's strange, especially since she has a theory connecting healing and offensive magic. Just then, the professor called out that nickname, the healer. I just grumbled in my head. They don't even bother to use my name anymore. He looked at the list and said, in today's class, we will have one-on-one sparring matches. Since the class has an odd number of students, you will be participating too. I could only listen helplessly. The fact that you can't use offensive magic is your own problem. Whatever the result is, you brought it on yourself. The professor's mouth curled into a sinister smile. I've finished the pairings. The match is you versus Unput. Hearing that guy's amused laughter, I wasn't even angry. Talk about a blatant setup. My eyes flashed with a sharp edge as I looked at my opponent. Unput Omen heard he's the spoiled child of a prestigious noble family always surrounded by his lackeys. From what I've seen in class, this guy actually has the skills of a real offensive mage. He isn't just bluffing. Unput, however, scoffed in disdain. Healing magic can't fix a bruised ego, can it? After I beat you to a pulp, are you going to run home and cry to your mommy? Facing such vicious words, Quill couldn't help but feel annoyed, his lip twitching. If it were his past life, he probably wouldn't have cared, but I have to admit this attitude really rubs me the wrong way. Plus, I want to test that theory Miss Jonica mentioned yesterday. I think I'll give him a little payback. Thinking this, he raised his hand and called out, "Excuse me, Professor." But the guy assumed, "I don't accept quitting." A hint of amusement in his tone, Quill replied, "Quit no way, I just have a small proposal." I get it, he thought. I'm not built for offensive magic like you said. Going on like this is just a waste of time. So if I lose this match, Quill said something shocking, I'll drop out of this school. The professor wasn't surprised at all. On the contrary, he praised him, saying it was a wise decision. But I'm not done yet. In return, if I win, will you let me join the regular classes? The professor's amusement vanished instantly. Don't get ahead of yourself. But Unput was thrilled, laughing loudly and agreeing, fine by me, a weakling trying to fight the strong clinging to a delusional fantasy to soothe his fear. I guess this pathetic brat needs that, and besides, it wouldn't be fun if there was nothing to crush. With no other choice, the professor accepted Quill's proposal to test out those impossible theories. That's just a waste of time, fine, go ahead. The professor threw his hands out to the sides, shouting, "Both of you positions!" Then he signaled the start of the match. Unput's body radiated a wave of magic as his magic circle appeared. Daggers materialized alongside it. He was incredibly proud of this technique. Watch closely. "This is my construct magic. The countless blades I create will pierce you to death," Unput shouted as he launched the daggers. "A loser who can't even use basic offensive magic, what are you even good for?" Facing the incoming danger, Quill calmly pressed his fingertips together. A magic circle appeared between his hands and his eyes glowed with a blue hue. Quill calmly dodged the incoming daggers. Seeing his opponent effortlessly dodge like that, Unput couldn't believe it. "What? My healing magic's essence is manipulation. I manipulate the target's life functions reasonably, then heal them by maximizing their recovery ability. But recovery is not the only thing I can manipulate if I shift it into an offensive form." Unput, thinking he only dodged by luck, started getting arrogant again. Quill didn't bother to argue. He silently adjusted his mana to enhance his physical strength. He caught an incoming dagger, then used his magic to adjust its trajectory. Just like that, the daggers fell to the ground due to the impact, but one remained in Quill's hand. Just in time, the blade glinted in the sunlight. He wore an incredibly confident expression. "I'll borrow this, thanks." The sudden turn of events caught everyone by surprise. What just happened was that offensive magic? I thought he only knew how to use healing magic. Quill corrected himself in his mind. It's not offensive magic. He's using healing magic to attack. It seemed everyone else couldn't tell the difference either. The biggest guy, Lupus, summoned more daggers, making excuses. I was just going easy on you before. Easy on. The number can still increase. There's no way an offensive mage loses to a healer. Quill easily used the dagger to block the others. The blades shattered into pieces. Lupus became increasingly agitated. It's not just about the number. The blade had now transformed into a giant sword. Get bigger. Seeing this, Quill calmly assessed, he's actually pretty strong. His innate understanding of magic is quite high. On his end, Lupus added another skill. Now I'll add rotation too. Lupus was extremely confident in this move. How's that? With this move, but Quill simply raised the small blade and blocked the giant rotating tip. This scene was truly unbelievable to him. Lupus gritted his teeth, creak, creak. He put all his might into channeling mana into his sword, while Quill thought he should probably boost his physical reinforcement a little more. Just as he thought that, he slashed, sending the giant sword flying high into the sky. As the blade stuck into the ground, Lupus's frustrated voice rang out, "No way!" In a split second, Quill appeared right behind him, smiling. "I'll heal your wounds properly, so please forgive me." The tip of the blade glinted in the sun, but something suddenly blocked his vision, and someone shouted, "That's enough!" Quill quickly backed away. As for Unput, he was so scared he fell flat onto the ground. A massive boulder suddenly appeared in the training yard. The professor's voice held a hint of trembling. "There's still the next match, both of you stop." The two of them stared at each other. Then Quill happily reminded him of the previous condition. "From now on, I can attend regular classes, right?" He was obviously extremely annoyed, huffing coldly. "Do whatever you want." Having achieved his goal, he beamed a bright smile. "Thank you very much, Professor." And just like that, he left the lesson. "If you'll excuse me," walking in a certain direction, lost in thought. Q was still pondering the sensation from just a moment ago. So this is what my own offensive magic style feels like. It's far more effective than I imagined. I actually managed to defeat a talented offensive mage, someone of my own age. Thanks to Professor Veronica, I've been able to use healing magic for offensive purposes. At last, the plan has succeeded. The flag symbol of the school fluttered in the wind on the other side. Unput tried to suppress his anger as he said, "Professor, this was just an accident during class. It's nothing to worry about. Besides, I don't really want to report something as trivial as this to my father." The professor didn't know what else to say. Unput's eyes glinted with a malicious streak. "You understand what I'm saying, don't you, Professor?" He habitually pushed his glasses up. "Of course I understand." The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. "We can't have a Heller strutting around like that." In a classroom with quite a few students, Q felt a bit nervous, thinking, "Finally, I've made it to class. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about offensive magic." The moment the door opened, it drew the attention of many students. The person who walked in was quite familiar. He only glanced up for a second before looking away. The professor stepped onto the podium and began to speak. "All right, let's start our magic tool crafting lesson." Since it was early in the semester, the material was still basic, and the homeroom teacher was covering several subjects at once. Today's lesson is magic tool crafting, huh? The Healing Magic Academy had something similar. He stood there smiling to himself, feeling nostalgic. As he spoke, he drew on the board to make things clearer for everyone. "Today we will be crafting bombs using... I'll hand out the materials. Just assemble them step by step and remember to channel your mana into them. In my past life, I only ever made recovery items like potions. This really is the Offensive Magic Academy, all right. Everything they make is a weapon." They probably assumed I would use mana proactively, but the essence of mana is crucial in crafting tools. "Most of the functionality depends on the materials themselves," Q thought as he opened his bag. "So I guess I really do need this class." Inside were 2 items, an ice golem eye fragment and some fire branch powder. He tried opening the textbook to look up information about them. Let's see. He mixed the fire branch powder with the ice golem eye fragment. Suddenly, the ice golem fragment emitted a strange surge of magic power. It immediately caught Q's attention. "What is this?" Without a moment's hesitation, he jumped up and used his physical enhancement skill to throw the fragment away. Just like that, an explosion occurred right in the classroom, and a massive chunk of ice appeared on the wall. The panic from just before began to subside. The professor's voice rang out. "Hey, you there, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Q tried to regain his composure to explain, "No, sir. It activated on its own before I could even channel my mana into it." But the professor, of course, wasn't going to let it slide. "No excuses, I'm deducting points from you." Suddenly a sound came from behind him. He turned his head and saw Unput and his gang laughing mockingly. Golden eyes glinted in the shadows. It seemed Q sensed something strange here. And then the next class started. On the table, a beast was caged. Next is the magical creatures class. But a salamander and a student were just staring at each other. In the front row, Q was the only one sitting at a desk. The reason was that the students with poor grades were forced to sit in the front. Focus, focus! His whole body couldn't help but stiffen. Being this close to a salamander, it seemed to be trembling violently. Suddenly, the salamander spat fire at its opponent, but Q had already anticipated it and pulled out a pan to block it. The professor asked, puzzled, "Why on earth did you bring a pan?" Q answered confidently. "I thought there might be a time I'd need it." But the professor confiscated it. Seeing the creature in the cage moving closer, Q leaned back. In his heart, he was certain, so that's how it is. They let me into the class. But they have no intention of letting me study properly. Now what should I do? In the corner of the room, a student was sitting in a rather tense posture. She looked quite worried as she glanced at him. After that, the harassment continued in the practice yard. Unput blasted fire toward Q, but used the excuse that his hand had slipped. Next in class, the professor demanded, "Now solve this problem." He hesitated and replied, "Sir, I haven't learned this part yet." He immediately used that to bully him. "Not keeping up is your fault. Points deducted, even outside the classroom." Trash was dumped all over his doorway. The dormitory manager heard the news and stepped in to punish him. "I heard you had a bad attitude in class. Your punishment is no dinner." This left Q feeling indignant. He groaned, "This is too unfair." Back in his dorm room, Q lay on his bed, exhausted. Everyone in the academy was hostile toward him. Just a few days in, and I've already hit so many obstacles. A mountain of challenges still lay ahead. Q raised his hand, determined, "I'm still making progress one step at a time. I can't let this bullying get me down forever." Images of that fight resurfaced. That was the first time I fought with my own hands and won. A spark of hope still burned in his heart. I can become an offensive mage. After encouraging himself, Q sat up to study. Finally, I've got the textbook. Let's review today's lesson. The next day, the classroom was pathetically empty. Looking at the clock again, he felt something was strange. It was time, yet the teacher was nowhere to be seen. In such a bizarre situation, instinctively, Q scanned the room. Besides himself, the only other person there was that girl. "It looks like they changed classrooms without even bothering to tell us." With no other choice, he stood up. There was no point in staying here any longer, and cautiously tried to strike up a conversation with her. She jumped in surprise. Then Quill scratched his cheek and voiced his theory. "Maybe they changed rooms for the next period?" Azika looked down, nodding in agreement. "I think so too." The next thing she said caught his attention since there was no one else here, no teachers, no one to look down on them. "So I've already figured out what happened." She radiated such a gloomy aura it was as if mushrooms were sprouting right off her skin. "I guess I'm in the same boat as you then." Azika's tone was dejected. Sharing the same experience of being cast aside, she added, "Let's just be friends, okay?" Q was a little surprised, secretly sizing up his classmate. She looked gloomy, but she was surprisingly sharp-tongued. He held out his hand and gave a bright smile. "Anyway, I'm really happy to make a new friend. It's nice to meet you." She let out an exclamation of relief. "How refreshing." She immediately stood up and shook his hand. "I'm looking forward to your help." It was the girl's turn to introduce herself. "My name is Azika Len." Q scratched his head, feeling a bit awkward. "Azika is the first friend I've made at this academy." Azika politely waved her hand and replied, "It's easy to understand why, Q. You rarely show up to class, and on top of that, you're a healer. Everyone says healers are just weaklings." Hearing that, he suddenly froze. She gave a wry smile and added, "But oh well. I attend class regularly and I'm a proper offensive mage, yet I don't have a single friend." Q reflected on her words just now. Setting her personality aside, the prejudice against healers was truly deeply ingrained. Offensive mages who fought on the front lines and earned great glory often looked down on healers. In his past life, he had been recognized early on as a royal healer, so he had never had to experience this kind of discrimination. But at an academy specializing in offensive magic, that attitude was extremely harsh. Studying here meant he would have to fight against that discrimination as well. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually asked, "Why did you come to this academy, Q?" He muttered the question back to himself. "You're asking me why?" The answer had been ready for a long time, so he said it straight out without a second thought. Because I was born a healer. I realized that's not an excuse for me to give up. But Azika just tilted her head clearly, not quite following, so he could only give a wry smile. In short, I have my own reasons. How about you, Azika? Why are you here? Not expecting to be asked, she replied, a bit flustered. Me. Well, I come from a small, noble family in the countryside, but since we don't have any sons, my parents were worried the family name would die out. So they thought if I could make a name for myself as an offensive mage, I could take my place as the female head of the house. This reason wasn't hard to understand. I see. Graduating from here will definitely help you achieve that, Azika said sadly. But the problem is I have almost no talent for offensive magic. That's why I don't have any friends and class feels like torture. Basically, it's as bad as it gets. But then she clapped her hands happily. But now I have a friend. Even though she was wearing a radiant smile, the content of her words wasn't exactly cheerful. With you here, someone even worse off than me, I don't have to worry anymore, even if my grades are a little pathetic. Kui couldn't help but retort inwardly, thinking like that with such a cheerful face, I don't know what to say. The two continued to chat in a friendly manner. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Thanks, I know you mean well. As he turned, he smiled and said, But things might not be exactly as you think, Azika. It was a cryptic remark that the simple-minded girl didn't understand at all. What do you mean by that? But Kui didn't answer her confusion. Come on, let's go find the classroom. The two walked out together. Wait for me. After a while of searching, they finally stepped into the right room. Here it is. Finally found it. Just as they entered, the professor immediately started scolding them. You two are late. The lesson started ages ago. Amidst the mocking laughter of the class, they both said, I'm sorry, I didn't know the room had changed. But of course the professor wouldn't let them off the hook for that. He wasn't going to listen to any excuses. Seeming to think of something, the professor's mouth curled into a sneer. While you're at it, he pointed to an incredibly complex diagram on the board. Solve this. Seeing that Azika couldn't help but feel indignant. This isn't fair. We just got here. How could we possibly know? Especially since Kui hadn't even attended a single class yet. Kui just stared at the board in silence, showing no reaction. The professor added, If you solve it correctly, I'll overlook your tardiness. Of course. If you get it wrong, you'll be penalized. Unput, sitting below, propped his chin on his hand and sneered. At this rate, he'll be failing the course soon. If he messes up, he'll lose points. Unput sat below, resting his chin on his hand, sneering, at this rate, he'll fail the course soon enough. To everyone's surprise, he picked up the chalk and the rhythmic clicking against the board echoed through the room. He wrote incessantly, leaving her completely stunned. As for the other guy, he just assumed it was nothing but a lucky guess, utterly useless. Finally, after a moment, the chalk stopped. The magic circle that had been undone began to glow with a faint light, and Quill's voice carried a hint of smug triumph as he asked, Well, Professor... The man couldn't believe it, pressing his face right up to the board. The professor's eyes widened in sheer shock, and after checking it, he had to admit, Correct, you may sit down. Unput was the one who reacted the most violently, shouting, What? He actually got it right. Azika was genuinely curious, wondering how. She looked over at the person wearing a look of total smug satisfaction. Quill, how on earth did you solve that? After class during his break, she scurried over to his side. Hey, Quill. Unable to hold back her curiosity any longer, she asked, How did you manage to solve that problem? Quill recalled what just happened and replied, How well it might look complicated, but it's actually just applying the examples from the textbook. I read ahead, that's all. Hearing this, Azika's eyes went wide and she practically screamed, What? She slammed her hands down on the desk, unable to believe it, and asked again, You read the textbook all by yourself? Seeing her intense reaction, all made him instinctively shrink back. The reason is pretty simple. I only read it for the first time yesterday. But it's true that Quat's curriculum is worthy of being the world's #1 magic academy. The knowledge is comprehensive and effective, systematically organizing everything from basic to advanced. If you master this, I'll easily surpass the level of an average combat mage even so. Without an aptitude for magic, just reading it would be tough enough. In my previous life, I was already a top student. So that mindset and knowledge helped me grasp combat magic quite quickly. After listening, a complicated feeling welled up in Azika's heart. A healer who can do all that? Quill, who exactly are you? Internal thought. The world's greatest former healer. While she was shivering, lost in her own thoughts, Quill was still nodding along, pleased with his own diligent study habits. Learning combat magic is really cool, so I stayed up late reading ahead. Azika's face went pale. The content is incredibly difficult. You're supposed to have an instructor to guide you before you can even read it. Quill, I thought you were a hopeless student. With that thought, she grabbed his sleeve, crying, "Could it be that I'm the only bad student here? Am I going to get bullied? Oh no, please don't leave me behind." He gently placed a hand on Azika's shoulder to comfort her. "It's okay. Anything you don't understand, I'll teach you." Quill seemed to be radiating a sparkling aura. "We're friends, aren't we?" Upon hearing that her mood improved significantly, Quill thanked you. Even though he just said that so sweetly in his heart, he was thinking rather cunningly. Of course I didn't come to this school to make friends, but if I have Azika's help, I can get a lot more done. Quill hesitated before making an offer. "In return, can you do me a favor?" After all, the lesson wasn't just theory. Calming down a bit, Azika remembered, next is basic combat magic class. The memories of that training field flashed back. "Oh, right. The subject I always fail, the reason I got kicked out of every class." She now thought, "But you can probably do it now, right? You even took down an unput." He had to be honest. "I can't really, I'm serious. I still can't use basic combat magic." Hearing that she became a bit worried, her palms clenching, but Quill said positively, "But I have a way." He shifted the focus to the person next to him. "That's why I need your help." On the training field, the students stood in neat rows. While standing there, he recalled the basic knowledge he knew. In combat magic, there is basic magic and unique magic. Basic combat magic is created so that anyone can use it simply by analyzing the formula. If you memorize the formula, you can use it. Images of unput using magic appeared as an example. As for the type of magic that only that specific person can use, it's called unique magic, even in Quat's curriculum. It is divided into basic combat magic classes and classes to train each person's unique magic, because for the latter there is no standard answer. So even I could potentially participate by using healing magic to attack. While he was lost in thought, the professor in charge stood right in front of Quill. "But regarding the former, if you can't use basic combat magic, there's no way you're passing this time." The professor looked quite confident. "Theory seems fine, but practice is a different story. You will fail this subject. If you can't use basic combat magic, but the practical exam is a different story. You are going to fail this class. If you can't even use a basic offensive magic." Qui didn't argue back. He just calmly replied, "Yes, sir." The professor led him over to a scarecrow standing in the distance. "It's just a routine check as always. Use a basic fireball spell to conjure a flame and hit that target." Folding his arms, he mocked me while reminding me that this was the most fundamental of all basics. "If you can't even manage this, then I can't let you move up a grade or graduate," the professor said, his eyes narrowing as he recalled that last battle. "I saw you using healing magic during the practice match the other day. And I've heard that the body moves more flexibly after being healed, but you can't even cast a basic offensive spell," he muttered, as if he could read my thoughts. Qui suddenly smirked, and the professor saw that expression. "For a good-for-nothing like you, just get out of my class." Wait, did that kid just smile? A mix of red and orange light illuminated the professor's eyes, which were wide with shock, because a flame had suddenly appeared in Qui's palm. "What? How are you able to use magic?" While everyone around was buzzing about what just happened, the person who caused the stir thought to himself, "Great, they didn't figure it out." Backtracking a moment to during the lesson, his plan was to have Azika create a fireball using basic offensive magic and then infuse it into the tail of a salamander. Not sure how. Qui managed to get a salamander's tail. The way the flame appeared was by hiding it in his hand while continuously using healing magic so the tail wouldn't burn away. The two of them chatted about this issue. "But doesn't that hurt? I'm a healer, so constant recovery is nothing to me." Back to the present, right before casting the spell, he used more healing magic to trigger the fireball inside the tail, making it look just like a fireball created right on the spot. Thinking that Qui gently launched the flame toward the target, the red circle was completely scorched. While the professor stood there with his jaw dropped, Qui just calmly smiled and asked, "How's that, Professor?" The professor recalled the scene and silently confirmed it was definitely fire. There was no doubt. It was truly basic offensive magic. That kid had actually managed to use an offensive spell. "So what?" The professor folded his arms, pretending to be calm, and said, "You passed. Move aside." Qui nodded obediently and replied, "Thank you very much, sir." Among the crowd, the people involved in the scheme were just as shocked, and one person was gritting their teeth because he had successfully summoned fire. Back at the office, Unput yelled at the person in front of him, "What the hell is going on?" The professor rested his chin on his hand, confused, and asked, "I'm wondering the same thing. Why on earth does that guy suddenly know how to use offensive magic?" His attitude was no longer mocking. "As usual, I don't care about that." Just thinking about that annoying smirk on his face, Unput lost his temper. "That guy dared to oppose me, and he's just a healer in the same class. I can't stand it. If I report this to my father, he could probably just dissolve this whole class." Hearing that, the professor snapped back to reality and blurted out, "Wait!" He turned around, leaving everything to the other person. "Fine, then do whatever you want. Just get him out of my sight." And just like that, the unpleasant conversation ended, leaving the professor in a state of confusion, not knowing what to do. Doing something. Getting caught outside of class hours carries high risks. This isn't like those bullying cases against noble students. Do you know what I had to go through to become a teacher at this academy? But I have to take the risk to protect my position. A healer who dares to act like that, I don't know what the other teachers will say. I won't let a 15-year-old healer ruin my life. This time, he would have to come up with a meticulous plan. There was no other way. He had to take matters into his own hands. At the training ground after class, Kui asked in confusion, "Is something the matter? Why did you call me out here, Professor?" The professor didn't answer. Instead, he turned to me with a smirk. "Seems like you've been a bit too confident lately, don't you think?" He ruffled my hair, adding, "All thanks to you, sir." I was met with a look of pure contempt. "Don't be a fool, I wasn't complimenting you." He started dragging up past incidents, getting all arrogant about it. "But what about this? Ever since you started here, you've skipped quite a few of my classes. How exactly do you plan on making up for that?" A bead of sweat rolled down my face as I felt completely helpless. I'd love to ask whose fault that actually is, I thought, but I still managed to give him a decent answer. "I've already borrowed the notes from a friend and studied everything on my own. I'm sure it shouldn't be a problem." The professor hit back with a reason that sounded incredibly annoying. "That is not for you to decide. If you are absent, you are required to take makeup classes." He instinctively pushed his glasses up again. "The instructor in charge gets to decide the content, and this makeup lesson will be, you're going to spar with me." I couldn't help but be shocked. A spar between a teacher and a student. The conditions to win are pretty easy. Naturally, I'll go easy on you. Given the difference in our strength, you only need to land one hit on me. I'll let you pass the course. Such a good deal you aren't thinking of running away, are you? As expected, I didn't answer immediately. Seeing me silent and deep in thought, he arrogantly thought to himself, "Your attacks are nowhere near capable of touching me. I'll give you a beating so you understand the gap in our power. Then you'll learn to listen." After a moment of consideration, I finally gave him my answer. "I understand. Fine, let's do it." Hearing that, a sinister look flashed across his face. Barely after I finished speaking, he immediately activated his magic circle. "Then let's start right here, right now." I remembered that massive rock. I'd seen his magic once before. It was earth manipulation magic. The ground in front of me shook violently, and I quickly jumped back to dodge. So fast. Suddenly, I noticed something. Inside one rock, another one popped out, making it extremely difficult to dodge. As I looked up once more, I was stunned. A huge stone pillar crashed down right where I'd been standing. The professor didn't hesitate at all. He sneered, "What's wrong? All you can do is run." Taking a split second to catch my breath, I analyzed the situation. This isn't construct-based magic. He's utilizing the existing terrain, which is why his attack speed is so extreme. On top of that, his attack trajectory is incredibly flexible. He's definitely on a completely different level than Unput. I pushed off the ground again, though I was quite confident in my speed. The proof is that it's not yet at a level where I can't dodge it. In a flash, the distance between us closed. The magic circle underneath lit up again, and in the blink of an eye, two large rocks appeared right beside me. Then they slammed together without a single gap. The man who did such a brutal thing just kept smiling. But things didn't go as the professor planned. I was holding a knife in midair. I swung the hand holding the knife back, but to my surprise, his entire body was protected by stone. The blade couldn't budge another inch. "It's so hard. This method won't do anything." I clicked my tongue and backed away. The professor laughed with disdain. "So weak. With that level of skill. Don't even think about breaking my crystallized earth armor." Under the circumstances, I couldn't help but retort, "That's a fancy name, isn't it?" This time, he started throwing out some cruel words. I've never heard of anyone using healing magic for attacks. What a half-baked copycat. The weakest magic trying to be an offensive mage, it's honestly ridiculous. I didn't get angry, just sighed. Professor, thanks to healing magic, I've studied the human body very thoroughly. I realized that humans usually have to suppress their own strength, because the body can't handle its own full power. If you try to force it past the limit, the body will fall apart on its own. The professor mockingly retorted, "What is this? Are you trying to lecture me? Are you planning to use your words to run away since your magic doesn't work?" I held out my hand and laughed. Wait a second. I pulled up my sleeve, revealing a bit of muscle. So even if I break my limits to exert more power, this body wouldn't remain intact. A flow of magic power radiated from my palm. But I'm a healer, so even if my arm breaks, it doesn't matter. He seemed to realize something. As I spoke, I stepped closer. Of course I don't exactly like the pain, but it'll heal right up. Even though he was quite panicked, the professor still scoffed. Stupid, that trick. How could you possibly break through my crystallized earth armor? I just calmly replied, just try and see. A wild smile appeared on my calm face. He could only gasp, unable to dodge the punch that swung down with full force onto his hardened face. The rock shattered, revealing his bloody, bruised face. I calmly smiled and offered a reminder. It's not good to just assume the limits of your students, Professor. I had learned a new lesson. Ever since Professor Veronica suggested that I use healing magic to attack, I realized there is nothing more foolish than assuming that something is impossible. I will definitely become much stronger than this. Suddenly, I felt something approaching right as I dodged to the side. A stone pillar erupted and shot straight forward. It seemed that punch just now wasn't enough to knock him out. The professor is absolutely furious now. Watching him try to stand up trembling, Q chuckled a bit and reminded him, "Hey, didn't you say I'd pass if I landed just one hit?" But the professor, refusing to give in, retorted, "Shut your mouth. There's no one here to witness this." A magic circle appeared on the ground. He couldn't bring himself to admit he'd been hit by a healer. Sharp stone spikes rose from the ground. I will never accept this. Faced with this situation, he just sighed in frustration and released his restraints. It's not like I only know how to throw a punch. Magic power surged from the soles of his feet, and in an instant, Will was right in front of his opponent. The professor stood there, jaw dropped, stunned. Too fast! He could only watch as his opponent raised his fist again. The iron wall armor, it's too late. The professor couldn't dodge. He could only squeeze his eyes shut, bracing for the impact, but after waiting and waiting without feeling anything, he hesitantly opened his eyes to see the fist stopped right in front of his face. What did he stop? Then he realized this strange situation. I can't move either. Just as he thought that the fist made contact with his face, and the professor finally realized, no way, is time slowing down? He couldn't utter a single word. He could only plead in his heart, stop it. The professor's face contorted in agony. This pain is so persistent. It hurts 1,000 times more than a normal punch. It feels like it's been going on for ages, and it's not even over yet. I can't take it anymore, but I can't escape, nor can I scream to release the agony. In this very moment, his inner pleas seemed to echo everywhere. Please make it stop. It was as if his inner thoughts were heard. Time instantly returned to normal, and the professor collapsed to the ground while the person who caused it all wore a gentle smile. Welcome back, Professor. To me, that was only a split second. Hearing that, the professor sat up and shrieked, "Ah, what was that? What did you do?" Q waved his hand dismissively to clear up the confusion. It's not what you think, Professor. Let me explain clearly. The moment my fist made contact, I cast a sensory enhancement spell on you. This is originally the healing spell for those with hearing or vision loss. I usually use it to boost my own reaction speed, but this time I cast it on you, at a level far beyond the limit. As a result, your senses became abnormally sensitive, making 1 second feel like 1,000. 1 second equals 1,000 seconds. Just how painful is it to be punched in that state? You probably know best, right? Even though he was smiling, his entire body emanated an incredibly terrifying aura. By the way, I have a question. Did I pass the exam? The professor clicked his tongue in annoyance. Fine. But Q wasn't finished. There was one more thing. His hand resting on the man's shoulder tightened. This is something that won't be easily erased. The habit of discrimination is deeply ingrained in you people, but if you dare to stand in my way again, he radiated an intense killing intent. I will make sure you truly know what pain feels like. I'll make sure your body remembers it to the bone. The professor was trembling in terror. I just want to study in peace. And of course, I don't want to be bothered by other students. Finally, pretending as if nothing had happened, Q spoke with extreme politeness. "You will fulfill my request, won't you, Professor?" As time passed, and the sunset light hit the school, the professor walked down the hallway, unable to stop thinking about that guy. What the hell is wrong with him? I always thought all healers lacked combat ability, and were just weaklings with no will to resist. Everyone said those people had to obey mages. We attack them, but he is completely different. Not only does he possess terrifying combat skills, but his willpower is so strong it actually emits killing intent. What a troublesome encounter. Unput appeared at just the right moment, looking extremely intrigued as he asked this. "Professor, did he pass the check?" After that, he chuckled, thinking that now the professor was even closer to being expelled. But suddenly the professor screamed, "Shut your mouth!" He shoved his face right up to the other guys and warned him, "Don't you dare touch me again. I'm only saying this for your own good. If you think he's just some run-of-the-mill heller, you're dead wrong. Seriously, you couldn't be more wrong." Unput, clearly not buying it, scowled and snapped back. "That's not what I wanted to hear. Did you forget what I asked Teach?" If I were to tell my father that familiar old line, "If it doesn't scare the professor anymore, then just go ahead and do it." Amidst his confusion, the professor continued, "Now that I think about it, if you can actually pull that off, then instead of targeting me, why don't you just get rid of him once and for all?" Before leaving, he dropped a cryptic hint, "If your family acts on your word, it's highly likely that later on, he will come back and bite us when we least expect it." In the empty hallway, Unput slammed his fist hard against the wall, curses spilling from his lips. Damn it all. A few days later, after class, the book was finally closed, stretching out to feel at ease. It's so peaceful. Why did things end up the way they did? You've probably figured it out, too. It seems the professor gave Unput a stern warning. Sometimes he still glares at me with resentment, but he doesn't dare do anything else. Azika walked over to ask about the assignment while Q was lost in thought. Thanks to that, I can focus on my studies. But this still isn't enough. That bloody scene flashes before my eyes again. To change that doomed future for humanity, I need to get much stronger. Yet on the surface, I remained calm as I explained the lesson to her. The idea of using healing magic to enhance my strength is good, but right now all I'm doing is just punching and kicking with every ounce of power I have. After finishing the lecture, Azika left looking satisfied. Leaving me alone, I realized that just using sensory enhancement is nothing but a parlor trick compared to the sheer variety of offensive magic. I'm still far behind. I need to come up with new ways to fight. I carefully asked the person in front of me, "That's what I've been thinking. Professor, what do you think?" Once again, Veronica appeared to meet with Q. Professor Veronica kept her eyes tightly shut and spoke in a cold tone. "Before that, I have one thing to say." Q, feeling incredibly dejected and reluctant, replied, "Yes." She crossed her arms and offered a praising smile. "Well done, Q." He had expected to be scolded, so he was shocked to hear her say that. "You're currently the talk of the faculty. For a healer to be able to keep up with the advanced lectures is quite an impressive achievement." Veronica shifted her gaze toward the other teachers, most of whom didn't seem pleased about this. Mikio gave a helpless smile. "I see." He asked, feeling highly suspicious, "Are you hiding the fact that you gave me advice?" Professor Veronica replied immediately, "I wouldn't call it hiding. I just don't talk to the other teachers much. It's simply that there hasn't been an occasion to bring it up." Cho silently recalled the image of her sitting all by herself in a corner, not saying a word. "Is Professor Veronica isolated even among the teaching staff?" "Oh." He scratched his head sheepishly, trying to smooth things over. "But I'm glad that's the case. Because it's all thanks to your advice, Professor. I would feel terrible if your position were affected because of this." Veronica spun around, ready to leave. "I don't care, so don't worry about it. Besides, if anyone should be grateful, it's me." Q asked, suspicious, "You feel grateful to me, Professor?" She turned her head back to answer his question. "As I said, with the mindset of a healer, they would never dream of putting that theory into practice." Veronica slowly drew the sword strapped to her back. She swung her sword with a stern expression. "I've been curious to see what a combat healer actually looks like in real life." Kyo began to feel flustered and panicked, asking, "Professor, what are you doing?" She raised her sword into a stance. "I want to test exactly where your current level is. Isn't that what you wanted to know, how to get stronger?" Hearing this, he hastily waved his hands to refuse. "Wait, but facing you, Professor Veronica." Veronica interrupted him. "On the battlefield, there is no such thing as a time out." She used her strength to spring forward. Q's face was a mixture of panic, terror, and confusion. He didn't know what to do. He brought his short blade up to block Veronica's attack. Kyo gritted his teeth using his small sword to try and hold off Veronica. She pressed down with force, but he quickly dodged away from the blade. Gritting his teeth as he struck back, he thought to himself, even though I used magic to boost my reflexes, I was still barely fast enough. He looked at her as she continued to swing her blade at him. At this rate, Professor Veronica isn't just fast, she's something else entirely. Every one of her movements is streamlined to the maximum to unleash continuous strikes. Q retreated, breathing heavily and feeling exhausted. Just relying on physical enhancement to keep up will reach its limit sooner or later. He gathered his strength to charge at Veronica, using the one opportunity he had with a burst of speed he hadn't revealed yet. The back of Q's foot stomped hard on the ground, creating a massive shockwave that made the ground sink. I have to catch her off guard. Q channeled his speed-boosted power and lunged. At the moment she showed a split-second opening, the sharp tip of his blade thrust straight toward Veronica's face. She gripped her sword tightly, and a surge of energy erupted from it. Veronica tilted her body and swung down with a strike so powerful that it left Q stunned. His eyes narrowed in a mix of fear, admiration, and shock. The tip of his small sword was cleanly sliced off, clattering onto the ground. Q stood there dumbfounded, only able to offer a few awkward chuckles. Veronica quickly sheathed her sword at her hip. She rested her chin on her hand, exclaiming, "I didn't expect you to make me use my magic sword." Xiao looked at her face, feeling helpless. How could she keep such a calm expression? Veronica put her hands on her hips and spoke with deep emotion. "I honestly thought your level was stuck at just being a healer, one who could only fight like an offensive mage. But in reality, your ability is already among the top tier of your peers in offensive magic." Q stammered in reply. "Thank you so much, Professor, but this is still not enough." Veronica crossed her arms, her eyes filled with anticipation. "I like people with ambition like you. Just enhancing your body isn't satisfying enough, right?" Chu lifted his broken sword. He looked at it and said, "Yes, no matter how much I break the body's limits. What I can do is still limited." Veronica crossed her arms and countered, "A sword isn't just for slashing. You can thrust it or even throw it. There has to be another way to use healing magic besides just physical enhancement." He scratched his head, feeling embarrassed, and replied, "I've thought of everything I could, but I haven't found anything that really works yet." She pointed a finger to her temple. "Perhaps you lack real combat experience. Every idea needs real-world experience. Only then can it take shape. Knowledge is important, but these ideas born from reality are what you're looking for. Did you not notice anything from the match just now?" Her words made Q reflect, and he realized she was right. He spoke timidly, seeking her guidance. "So, should I continue sparring with you?" Professor Veronica replied, "That wouldn't be bad, but there's a field training session coming up where we'll be hunting monsters." Ashu, hearing this, was deeply surprised and echoed, "Field training." I thought to myself that this had happened in my previous life as well. The joint monster extermination training session between the three academies, Quad Attack Magic Academy High School, Healing Magic Academy, and Sinburn Swordsmanship Academy. Students from each school would form teams to carry out practical monster-slaying missions. I didn't participate when I was at high school, but I still remember the images of those monsters. In this life, I will exterminate the monsters and change that doomed future. I clenched my fists with ironclad resolve, determined to succeed. Veronica stared at me for a moment without a word, her gaze darkening as she spoke. "If you want to participate, you have to prove your abilities through the Academy's selection exam. They say there's a so-called genius among this year's freshmen. Your goal is to take the top spot among your peers." I asked with great curiosity, "How does the selection exam for field training actually work?" Veronica didn't hesitate and replied immediately, "The candidates will fight each other directly." She began to describe it to me, saying that every year about 100 people apply, and only a few who truly show their strength are selected. I heard this and thought to myself that this school really only cares about fighting. I rested my chin on my hand, slipping into a thoughtful state. I remember in the second timeline so few people signed up that anyone who wanted to join could. This proactive approach must be Quat's style. I looked back on the memories of my previous life. The second timeline, huh? How nostalgic. I wonder what my master is doing right now. Veronica spoke up, reminding me, "By the way, I heard that genius has even surpassed the teachers." Taking first place won't be easy. I was incredibly excited, deep down thinking it's much better than that homeroom teacher back then. I asked with curiosity, "Has the professor not met that student yet?" Veronica sighed with regret. "I heard another teacher is already in charge of that student, so he never comes to find me for guidance." I chuckled awkwardly and helplessly, thinking to myself, I don't think that's the only reason. The other students don't dare approach you either. She put a hand to her chest with a firm expression. Don't worry, I'll help you train. Hearing that I was overjoyed and thanked her, Thank you very much, Professor. Time passed quickly until the day of the selection exam. I was walking along the corridor of the arena thinking, in the blink of an eye, the day of the exam has arrived. My face showed clear determination and resolve. I've prepared as best as I can. Now all that's left is to fight. Suddenly a voice from behind made me stop. Hey, Kwai! I turned around suspiciously and called out, Headmaster? He was the chairman of the Academy Alliance. Also the headmaster of Quat Academy, Al-Nizam. Al-Nizam wore a bright smile as he approached. Long time no see. How is my granddaughter doing lately? I smiled and replied, She's doing very well, sir. He stared at me and said, Even though you are the one who saved my granddaughter, I apologize that I've only now been able to pay attention to you. I know you've prepared yourself mentally, but life at Quat must be tough, right? I placed my hand on my chest and answered with great confidence. At first I struggled a bit, but now I'm doing just fine. I said with great excitement, I'm even aiming for the top spot in this selection exam. Al-Nizam stroked his beard and laughed heartily. That's the spirit. Suddenly a boisterous voice came from the opposite side. Ridiculous, just hearing that makes my ears itch. He slowly approached the two of us. This brat thinks he can compete for first place. As the training supervisor, I must teach you brats a lesson. He was the field training supervisor, Bots. I turned back to stare at him. I started assessing him. I had met him in my previous life. I recalled the memories. Bots the Purple Lightning was an attack mage who had achieved many glorious feats during the Great War. While I was thinking, Bots grabbed me by the collar. Personally, I didn't have many fond memories of him. He radiated an overwhelming aura that suppressed everyone around him. Combat is a world of raw talent. Practice and effort are just things piled on top. Bots glared fiercely into my face. As a healer, you have no chance of winning. Facing the current situation, Al-Nizam stepped in to mediate. The test is coming soon. Let the results answer for themselves. Arguing won't solve anything. Bots heard this and released me. Arguing, you say? This is my way of teaching. He turned his back with a very arrogant expression. Besides, the opponent you have to face is my student Sirius. A teenage figure stepped out from the distance. That young man was none other than the former ace Lunos. My eyes narrowed as I stared at him, looking at the familiar silhouette of the person I once knew walking toward me. That is the genius. The former ace, Lunos, the opponent I need to defeat to take the lead. Our determined eyes met, staring at each other with conviction. Al-Nizam stroked his beard and exclaimed, What passion! Very good, but it is almost time. Come on, don't just stand there like a dummy, let's go! The contestants quickly lined up to enter the arena. The audience was buzzing with explosive energy, and the contestants stood in neat, orderly rows waiting for the signal. Kui turned to the side and asked, Azika, you're participating too? Azika sobbed helplessly. If I don't participate, my allowance gets cut. The guys behind them glared at him with icy daggers. Kui gave a helpless, forced smile, thinking he really didn't want to be here at all. Al-Nizam stood in the middle of the students to give a speech. I am very proud to see such a large number of applicants this year. Let your passion and fighting spirit burn bright. He raised a finger and began to explain. The preliminary round is about to start. After the allotted time, those who are still standing will move on to the main round. Quill was incredibly tense, thinking to himself, a survival match with hundreds of people here. Isn't it going to be way too cramped? As if reading his thoughts, Al-Nizam slammed his staff into the ground. I'm sure you're all worried that it'll be a bit tight, but don't worry. A surge of magic erupted. It created a void dimension beneath everyone's feet. Everyone looked down, completely stunned. What is this under the ground? Is that a starry sky? He raised his staff high into the sky and it caught the sunlight. A massive magic circle appeared above. Let's begin. Kui was teleported to a forest. He started looking around, observing his surroundings. Is this the forest behind the academy? Suddenly, Al-Nizam's voice echoed out, Everyone, can you hear me clearly? I have just randomly teleported all of you. You can choose to avoid strong opponents or team up with people you know. Azika was panicking, screaming, Where is this? CJ looked surprised, listening intently as he continued, However, your starting position is entirely up to luck. Kui looked up at the sky and exclaimed, Teleporting that many people in the blink of an eye, that's unbelievable. At the sound of his announcement, birds took flight. He declared the start of the selection exam for field training. Kui quickly leaped forward, jumping onto a high tree branch. To observe, Kui began casting a skill on himself to hide his presence, suppressing all life activities and concealing his existence. Suddenly, a noise came from behind him. It caught his attention. A group of 2 people were fighting a girl on this side. The young man reached out and ordered, "Go, my golem!" Erica saw it rushing toward her and swung her hammer, shouting, "I'll crush you with this magical hammer!" The girl also blew a blast of cold air, a blizzard. Kui stood behind, smiling as he watched. "This is a great chance to see all kinds of offensive magic. If I only focus on passing the exam, it'd be such a waste." He curled his lip into a sly smile. "Not bad. I want to try that move too." The young man and his pet had just taken down the 2 girls. Both of them cheered, throwing their hands up. "All right, I took them both out. See how strong my golem is." Suddenly, Quill glided out from behind them and replied, "I saw it clearly." He reached out and grabbed the young man's head, then cast a spell to disrupt his consciousness. The young man's eyes went blank. He lost all strength, falling backward with his limbs still limp. Kui kept his hand on his head, beginning to sense and manipulate the flow of vital energy to knock the opponent unconscious. I have to hold the opponent's head, so it's hard to use if the skill gap isn't that big, but it can neutralize an enemy without causing much injury. Kui broke into a nervous sweat and gave a forced smile. "This is a technique I came up with during special training with Professor Veronica. Glad it actually worked." Suddenly, he looked behind him in alert. 3 knives flew toward him, aimed right at Kui, but he dodged them quickly. He stared vigilantly at the sword stuck in the ground. "This magic is—" After identifying it, Kui breathed a sigh of relief. He looked toward Unput and 2 others approaching. "Unput, you never know when to quit, do you?" He reached out, sneering. "Don't you know how to give up?" "I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm just putting in my best effort to pass this exam." All 3 of them simultaneously unleashed their magic with all their power. Kui thought to himself, "So, 3 against 1, huh?" He unleashed sword beams glowing with a bright orange light. Magic blade creation. The blonde-haired boy next to him stepped forward. Poison enhancement magic. All 3 used their abilities, launching the blades toward Kui. Shadow clone magic. Unput laughed loudly, feeling smug and triumphant. "These poison blades will cut right through your skin with just a light touch, and with this many, and no matter how fast you are, don't even think about blocking them all." The swords whistled through the air, aimed straight at Quill. He looked up at the toxin-filled blades, thinking, using healing magic to detoxify is fine, but with this many? And only using physical enhancement to get through this. Getting even 1 scratch is going to be tough. His hand began to channel his own mana. "If it's this—" Suddenly, a blurry figure rolled toward his feet as the swords collided and pierced the body. Seeing the afterimage, Unput immediately recoiled, sweating bullets and shouting in disbelief, "What the hell is that?" The goblin was currently using its body as a shield in front of Q, who raised his hand and began channeling magic into it. Essentially, recovery magic only works on living beings. But this golem operates using the summoner's blood as a medium. In other words, it's a magical creature, so he raised his hand and began to direct it to attack. Even though it can't perform complex actions like a living creature, as long as you channel life force into it, you can control it. The goblin followed his command and rushed toward the other 3. It swung its fist into the chest of the guy named Oot, making him cough up blood, and then, as a gift of artificial life, it turned and sat flat on another person. Unput stood on the side, watching extremely impatient. "You guys don't let yourselves be taken down that easily." Suddenly, an afterimage flashed right in front of him, startling him. Q's hand gripped his face, and he gave a gentle smile, saying, "All right then, good night." Switching scenes, the goblin was fighting 2 other players. Q, watching from a tree, thought to himself, "Physical enhancement only allows for close-range combat, but golems can cover that weakness. Furthermore, by doing this, I can calmly observe everyone's attack magic." When suddenly he opened his eyes wide in absolute shock. From afar, a powerful tornado was slowly engulfing Q's body. He was both panicked and confused. What just happened? Suddenly, a blast of magic rushed toward Q, who jumped off the tree with all his might. That power! It destroyed nearly half of the green forest, and even the 2 classmates from earlier and the goblin were knocked flat to the ground. Q stared at the devastated surroundings, completely dazed. From the haze, a familiar figure slowly stepped forward. It was CJ casting magic and slowly approaching. Q thought to himself, The genius CJ, just as expected, his ability is truly impressive. Defeating him won't be easy. He quickly shoved his hands into his pockets to defend. Should I try this? His eyes narrowed when he heard Alnizam's announcement. Stop, that's enough. Everyone stopped upon hearing the announcement. You've all worked hard. The preliminary round ends here. The 4 people still standing have passed the preliminaries, and a teleportation circle appeared beneath everyone's feet. The finals will take place tomorrow at the arena, so from now until then get some rest. I will activate the teleportation magic. Please stay where you are. As he was being teleported, Q turned to look toward CJ and his eyes filled with murderous intent. Staring intently at Q, he started breaking into a cold sweat and thought, it seems he's really looking forward to tomorrow too. Tomorrow is the final match. Everything quickly returned to peace as they departed. Switching to Kyo's room, he was sitting at his desk writing something down. What should I do to kill time today? Outside the door, a commotion erupted. That's enough, Unput! The 2 people following Unput were desperately holding him back. That guy is seriously strong. Plus, I think he even healed us when we were unconscious. Unput turned back, glaring angrily. Shut your mouths, you commoner nobles. What the hell would you know? According to the Omen family code, being shown mercy by someone is absolutely unacceptable. He turned his face away and began to calculate. If this gets out, I don't know what Father will say. While the other 2 looked at each other, breaking into a cold sweat without saying a word. Both sighed helplessly and turned away to leave. Then go do it yourself, Unput, we're out. No one wanted to get beaten up anymore. He panicked and called out, wait! But they both ignored him and left. With an ugly expression, Unput was furious. Whatever, I have to take him out now. Chiu was sitting calmly eating snacks and reading completely unbothered when suddenly a knock on the door interrupted him. He closed his book and stood up. At this hour, Chiu stepped out and slowly opened the door, thinking to himself, something feels wrong. Unput with a friendly face reached out to greet him. Hi there, Q. Good evening. Don't you think tonight is beautiful? Highly alert, he asked, what kind of scheme are you plotting? He smiled back in a friendly manner. A scheme, I just wanted to have a peaceful chat with you. Unput reached out, starting the conversation. Let's be straightforward. I hate you. I hate the Heller lot so much, I've pulled all sorts of tricks to kick you out of this academy. If Kapil recalled the scenes from before, thinking to himself, I've already pulled off a few tricks of my own, haven't I? Well, sleep tight, he said with a mysterious smirk. Though I really should have just been blunt instead of beating around the bush so much, Unput thought, his face tightening with intense anger. And I order you to get out of this academy. Ikkyo immediately shook his head, refusing. I have to give you credit for coming this far seriously. Why are you so hell-bent on opposing me? He asked arrogantly. Why, you ask, I despise Hellers, so why the hell would I need a reason? Unput replied, pointing at himself with immense pride. Even within the Omen family, anyone born a Heller is shipped off to remote, desolate branches. My own brother was the same, a weak, useless guy. He muttered, thinking back to his brother. Even when mocked, he'd just force a smile and let it slide. A proud, offensive mage and some pathetic healer, those are 2 completely different levels. Kyo's expression darkened as he replied, Is that the kind of upbringing deeply ingrained in you, nobles? Unput spread his arms wide and commanded, If you get it now, then get lost, quit. This isn't a place for pathetic healers. Kyo's face hardened. You think I'm just going to say I quit? Chu replied with extreme confidence. I'm going to make you say those words yourself. Unput's eyes gleamed with greed. You have family you care about too, right? Q's face immediately furrowed as he stared at him. What? Unput, looking smug, began to explain, I had my servants investigate you outside the academy. Kyo, who grew up with his older sister in a remote village. You two must be very close, right? Q's expression visibly sank. If I give the order to my underlings, what do you think will happen to her? I'll leave that to your imagination. He stepped closer to Q and asked, Well, have you decided yet? Q replied calmly, Yeah, I've decided. Just as Unput was about to gloat, his neck was suddenly grabbed. If you understand, then get lost. Pack your things. Q shoved him back forcefully. He sat down and twisted Unput's arm behind his back. Unput trembled, whimpering, Stop it. It's going to break. Q, with a completely nonchalant expression, exerted more strength. I told you, didn't I? I've already decided. Unput screamed in desperate agony, Stop! After a piercing shriek, Unput collapsed to the ground, wailing in pain. He continued to mutter, You think you're going to get away with this? Just wait until I show them this broken arm. The academy won't let this slide, neither will my father. Chu grabbed his arm and cast a healing spell. It's fine. I already fixed it. Seeing this, Unput was absolutely terrified. What are you planning to do? His eyes rolled back as he shrieked in pain. Unput's arm was broken all over again, then instantly healed by Q's magic. I'll just fix it again. Q lifted his arm indifferent, then snapped it again. He pleaded in agony. Please, don't. Cho flashed a forced smile and replied, Come on, my resolve isn't that flimsy. Target me all you want, but you dare lay a finger on my sister and I won't just sit by. All right. The shrill screams echoed repeatedly. You have to swear it from the bottom of your heart. I need to break your will first. Unput lay on the ground, having fallen into the abyss. What the hell is this guy? He looked at Q's face, which was smiling at him. This is bad. He's a devil in the skin of a healer. Never ever mess with him again. I'm going to live a life worse than death. After a dramatic and intense moment, Q spoke up. All right, sleep tight, Unput. He waved goodbye to Unput, who moved like a soulless corpse. Don't forget your promise not to bother me again. Ixu stretched, feeling completely refreshed. Honestly, that felt pretty good. All right, time to sleep and prepare for tomorrow. The scene shifts to the next day. Chu stood in the arena thinking to himself, the main tournament is about to start. Alazam stood above, arms crossed, observing below. Boss sat next to CJ, also watching. Q thought, the top 4 from the preliminaries will face off. It's a single elimination tournament, but... He put his hands on his hips and said, I didn't expect you to make it through, too. Ezeka stood timidly in front of him. Ezeka could only helplessly recall, well, I just created firewalls and stuck to a defensive strategy. It was mostly luck, too. I didn't actually take anyone out. Q heard this and sighed. An offensive-type mage who defends from start to finish. You really are a rare find. He stared at Ezeka, worried deep down. But will you be able to hold out if you keep playing like that? She spoke up shyly. We're friends, after all. Why don't you go easy on me a little? Q replied decisively. No way. I knew you'd say that, she thought. She put her hands up into a combat stance. Well, anyway, I've already passed the qualifying score. Now I'm just going to give it my all. Seeing this, the referee raised his hand to signal. The match begins. Ezeka broke into a cold sweat. Let's do this magic. She launched a fireball toward Q. The fire, he quickly used his hands to create a shield to block it. His face remained unchanged, thinking, standard fire magic. With this level of firepower, my healing magic can still handle it. Q looked toward his opponent, muttering to himself, Sorry, Ezeka, but I'll make quick work of this. Suddenly, Q's face turned into one of pure shock. Something's wrong. What is this? Ezeka continued to launch another fireball. It's not over yet. Q quickly dodged to the side so the fire wouldn't touch him, shocked to see the flames surrounding his body. The flames he had just encountered kept burning and refused to go out. This was Ezeka's special magic, fire magic, with abnormally persistent properties even though its destructive power was only average. It's dangerous to keep taking hits just because you think you can heal in time. A plan from the past flashes through his mind when he borrowed her fire last time it burned for a long time. Turns out it wasn't just the salamander tail's property, but also her ability at play. Using this to create a wall of fire, it's tough to break through. But in the end, Q feels a bit helpless, thinking it really reflects Erica's stubborn nature. The students in the stands are all cheering for Erica. That girl's pretty good. Take that Heller guy down. She starts to feel more confident. Oh my God, could I actually beat Q? That's right. I made it through the preliminaries, too. Caught up in the moment, Erica boldly shouts, If you want to surrender, now's your chance, Q. But he just responds calmly. It's fine. I'm about to counterattack. She instinctively blurts out, Of course you are. Only then does she realize something is wrong. A fireball much stronger than the last is launched. This time, he's definitely going to hit. The corner of Q's mouth curls into a smirk. If this fire won't go out, he reaches out his palm to touch the flames. To carry out the plan he made, he decides to use it to attack. Witnessing that scene, Erica is shocked and thinks to herself, using my own fire, a fire punch. Just as she lets her guard down, Q is already right in front of her. Her face turns pale. Q gets close and Erica shrinks back, stuttering, I surrender. That makes him stop in his tracks. Terrified, she collapses to the ground. The MC's voice booms over the speakers. The winner is Q. From the stands, there are low murmuring boos, but Q doesn't seem angry at all. Even after winning, a Heller doesn't get any respect. People turn to berate Erica. Don't just give up like that. And you call yourself an offensive mage. She clutches her head, shaking with fear. They were just cheering for her a moment ago. I'm sorry. Q takes the person's hand and comforts her. Don't worry about that. I think Erica fought really well. He heals her wounds too, adding, you'll definitely have a chance to pass. She stares at their joined hands, dazed, calling out Q. But the romantic scene is shattered by the arrival of someone else. No, wait, that's impossible. Erica grabs Q's shirt in fear. It's Boss. He scoffs, raising a finger and lets out some harsh, unpleasant words. Hellers are just useless trash. Surrendering to that kind of trash means you're even worse than trash. Boss radiates an intimidating pressure. It's a clear failure. Get out of here before you waste any more of my time. She trembles, barely able to answer. I'll leave right away. After Erica leaves, Q turns to confront him. Isn't it too harsh to talk to a student like that? Boss uses an excuse to justify his actions. I am the supervisor. If the level of the participants is too low, I have to tell them the truth, don't I? That's called tough love, Boss says as he turns to walk away. But his words seem to imply something else. Looks like only one person is going to pass this year. Suddenly, a tiny voice sounds behind Q. You're in the way. He turns to see a familiar face, Kias. When did you get there? And speak up a little. As Kias brushes past him, Q cautiously asks, Do you think like Professor Boss too? And Cias's answer is, in the end, power is everything. Professor Boss is right because he is strong. Everyone has their own opinion. Q can't argue with that. I understand. Cias's faint voice continues, but I don't think you're weak either. Kias turns back, putting his trust in Q. I hope you go all out. Q frowns, looking seriously at the person in front of him. This familiar name really brings back a lot of memories. Cius Lunos. Now that he remembers in his past life he heard of a mage who was terrifyingly strong in offense, sharing the same fire element. On the northern front, the winds he created wiped out everything around him while taking down many opponents. This power really sweeps everything away. Finally, it's the final match, Q versus Kias. Before the match starts, Q initiates the conversation looking at Professor Boss's attitude. It seems I'll never be recognized unless I win. A familiar, confident smile appears on his face. So I will definitely win. Opposite him, Cius just calmly replies, Is that so? Once the two contestants finish talking, the referee shouts, Final match of the selection exam, begin. A gust of wind erupts from beneath his feet. A giant blast of wind is launched by hands much smaller than his. Q nimbly dodges to the side, his feet stomping down hard, sending streaks of electricity surging outward. Q uses the recoil to dash toward his opponent. Cius's face becomes clearer and clearer. Suddenly, a massive storm of wind rises up, forcing Q to step back. The force is so strong that Q has to cover his face. After a quick bout, he didn't rush in to attack like before. He finally realized he couldn't get close. Who knows who will win this match? Whether it's Chu or Shius, the outcome will be clear soon enough. As a cloud of dust rose in the arena, Shius tiredly muttered, Too fast, this is such a pain. Magic power gathered in his palm, and he thought, Then how about this? A powerful blast of wind appeared a different form from the wind column earlier. Q recognized the difference. It wasn't a tornado, but a wind blast capable of clearing an entire area. He started casting magic on himself, thinking, At this rate, I'll be blown right off the stage. He crouched, pressed his palm to the ground, and decided, I have to use this. A strange phenomenon occurred. A tiny sapling sprouted and rapidly grew into a massive tree. Sitting in the stands, Ezeka gasped, Is that also healing magic? Admiration for Q rose. He was even stronger than they thought. He felt extremely confident in this technique. Professor Veronica, what do you think? As a leaf fell from the tree, Veronica just looked on bewildered. This is... Shio stepped up to explain why the tree grew from the ground. I channeled my life energy into the plant to make it grow instantly. I read about offensive plant control magic in the library and figured I could do it too. With this technique, my tactics will be much more diverse depending on the type of plant. Suddenly, his vision blurred. Before he could steady himself, his swaying body was caught by Veronica. She calmly lifted him and asked, Are you okay? He scratched his head, asking cautiously, I'm fine, but am I running out of mana already? He scratched his face nonchalantly, adding, The book didn't say this move was so draining. She suddenly lowered her voice and said, So that's how it is. He asked skeptically, What do you mean? She explained the situation. Destruction is always easier than restoration. Healing magic consumes far more mana than offensive magic. When you use healing magic to attack, the efficiency is bound to be incredibly low. Another new lesson to learn. Got it. I have to be more careful about when I use it. Finally returning to the present, Chu thought confidently, and this is the moment. I never really had a knack for offensive magic anyway. I'll overcome these disadvantages. But facing the massive tree, Xius calmly raised his hand, and the tree was instantly split in two by a sharp gust of wind. This was a move he hadn't expected. Wind blades. He has that move too. Qiu's mind raced through the moves he had used: a tornado that cruelly swallowed enemies, a gale that swept away an entire area, and those wind blades that sliced through hard wood. Anyone who got close was blown away by the swirling vortex. After listing them, he concluded, the magic is too strong. There are no openings. Truly the level of a top candidate. However, Chu wouldn't give up easily. I've already decided to become strong using this very magic. Thinking that, he lunged forward again. Protected by his wind, Xius casually said, no matter how many times you try, you'll never be able to lay a finger on me. Qiu was blown far away, but the corner of his mouth curled into a smile. Xius noticed it. Xius couldn't help but feel puzzled. Suddenly, a sharp plant spiked up and pierced his shoulder, then immediately dove back into the ground, leaving him stunned. What the hell was that? Qiu kindly explained, your vortex doesn't protect you from underground, right? This type of plant roots deep and can sprout anywhere. Actually, they're called rhizomes, not roots. As Xius glanced at a familiar figure behind the stands, he clicked his tongue in annoyance and fell silent for a moment. Curious, he asked, why do you care so much about Professor Voth? You two don't seem like a good match. Voth was frowning at the match below. The answer was simple. He's strong and he teaches me. But Qiu didn't believe it for a second. Just for that, you don't need to learn from him. You come from a prestigious family, don't you? Xius went quiet before starting to tell his story. In my family, magical talent is everything. Age or gender doesn't matter. The strongest is the one who leads. So everyone is an enemy fighting for inheritance. Even my father refused to teach me magic. Hearing that, he felt quite frustrated and muttered, what kind of family is that? Xius concluded, so following the professor is the best way for me to get stronger. The conversation ended, and the battle resumed. Are you done yet? My shoulder where you hit me still hurts like hell. Everyone watched in fear at the overwhelming power in front of them. Qiu smiled bitterly at the sight a dragon made of wind had appeared. Let's end this. The dragon zoomed toward its opponent. Xius was truly getting serious now. Lately, deep down, I kept thinking the mages attacking us were just playing around. That I was the only one trying hard in the fight despite having zero natural talent. But it turns out that's exactly it. Having zero talent doesn't mean you're superior or above anyone else. In the end, talent or past's everything is weighed equally, and because of that, he suddenly laughed and blurted out, Chewit, I really want to defeat you now. Just a thought to himself. The two face off like mortal enemies. He's declaring something. A magic circle appears on the ground. Come forth, my best seed. Massive branches burst out instantly, and these parasitic leaves bloom outward. In the center of the giant trunk, a magic circle appears. The tree is named Grazo. It's a species that usually takes a lot of time to grow to a massive size, but to force it to grow this fast, it will consume way more mana than any other plant. The dragon and the tree collide violently, but as more mana is poured in, the tree grows taller and taller. The force of the wind is so strong that Quill has to retreat. The dragon finally shatters the tree, making Kiwit sigh with relief. The branches are blown into the sky by the wind, but it's not just a branch. It's that giant tree trunk itself. He didn't think his own eyes would be tricked, so Kiwit is shocked to the point of blurting out, what? Again, he has to explain clearly, this type of tree has an extremely powerful life force. Even a single branch can become colossal. Since Kiwit is creating a wind dragon, he won't have time to defend. Finally, the tree trunk crashes down onto the ground. Kiwit is struggling to crawl out from under the giant tree, pinning him down. In front of him is Quill standing firmly, pointing his sword at Kiwit. Even though he can't stand this humiliation, he still has to admit I lost Quill. The sound of Quill's heavy breathing is drowned out by the announcer declaring the winner Quill. The event leaves everyone in the stands stunned and they start buzzing with rumors. Hey, that healer guy actually won. He took down Chewit in a one-on-one. Maybe he really is strong. Ever since the match was decided, Chewit has been silent, head bowed. Quill reaches out a hand intending to help him up and comments, that was a close one. Truly a genius is different. But contrary to that warmth is Chewit's disappointment. Still not good enough. Quill is surprised to hear this. He reflects on the match. What do you mean not good enough? That was an amazing match. At this moment, a voice booms, "How disappointing!" followed by an incredibly powerful bolt of lightning striking the arena floor. Smoke rises after the shockwave of the lightning. Chewit took that hit head-on. He just fainted like that. Boss walks over easily using his foot to shatter the tree pinning Chewit. He picks him up with one hand skillfully. Boss just leaves taking Chewit with him. He is angry and disappointed in him. "You failed, Chewit. I will retrain you." His words make the people in the stands gasp. That's way too harsh. Boss imposes his own thoughts on everyone, getting angrier by the second. All you lot in the stands think like me too. I will never accept a healer taking first place. Seeing his aggressive attitude, no one in the stands dares to resist or even move an inch. Only Quill dares to speak up, and he is the one with the most right to speak right now. He is frustrated by the man's words. This is going too far. I'm the one who won. But that doesn't mean Chewit is weak. It was an even match, and if we fought again... Boss's eyes glare at him fiercely. He doesn't want to hear any opposition. Don't you dare talk back to me. A good match, a promise for the future. You idiots. On the battlefield, raw power is everything. Losing means being treated like trash and dying, that's it. Quill senses the rotten nature of this guy. He feels indignant on Chewit's behalf, even for his own student. Quill confidently points at himself. Well, then I defeated Chewit, didn't I? I proved my strength. The rage in Boss's heart is growing. His voice is terrifyingly deep. That level of power... Boss slowly walks up, crowding into Quill's space to pressure him, but Quill remains calm. He starts to reason with him. It's true we can't fight, but we support everyone with healing magic. It's a division of roles. If we don't know how to work together, humanity will perish. Boss goes quiet for a moment after hearing this. The muscles in his face don't relax even a little. Boss makes a motion as if brushing dust off Quill's clothes, his voice flat. My students stayed on the front lines to save you healer types so you could run away. But those healers were wiped out miserably by small fry monsters while fleeing. My students broken and with nowhere left to go, they all died. You can't even stand firm on the battlefield. You couldn't even save my students. Why did Chewit have to sacrifice himself for trash like you? As the final sentence ends, that's also when he has his fist ready, aimed at Quill. Quill stands motionless as he hears the buried pain of the man. Quill also acknowledges, Professor Boss has a point. Thinking of this, countless images of the battlefield flash through his mind. I'm counting on you. From now on, you are the greatest healer in the world, so I should have fought with my own hands. If you are weak, you will never amount to anything with your power. I have to fight with my own hands, the demon reminded himself, but an era where monsters become even more ferocious is about to arrive. When that happens, those who hold power can no longer be selfish. He clenched his fists and slowly spoke. Then what about those like me who have nothing in their hands? That makes it even more necessary for me to become stronger. If I defeat you, Master, will you acknowledge me? Boss lowered his hand. His lips curled into a sneer, treating what the boy said like a joke. Boss turned to instruct the referee of the previous match. Hey, you, as soon as the match starts, take the kid and get out of here. The other person was startled and wanted to ask again to confirm, Professor Boss, don't tell me you're actually planning to fight him. Boss replied with certainty, once it's a selection, the rules are decided by me. As the referee carried the kid away, he still looked at Q with a face full of worry, but in his eyes at this moment was full of determination without a single shred of fear. Looking at the scene before him, the referee could only shake his head and let out a sigh as he carried the kid away from the arena. Then the tougher battle officially began. The special match Boss versus Q started. Boss rubbed his hands together to warm up, and a powerful surge of energy was generated. He was full of confidence and contempt for his opponent. I will prove to you just how low your level really is. The overwhelming aura and strength of Boss made Q slightly wary. My mana is about to run out, and this opponent is the strongest one yet. I won't win by fighting normally. I must use this first. Seeing how he deployed his technique, Boss also attacked and judged too slow. Asho looked up, the light from Boss's magic shining on his face. His attack was incredibly powerful, as if it wanted to tear space itself apart. After that attack, the aftermath left clouds of dust spreading. Boss held up 3 fingers on his hand, extremely smug. Let me teach you the 3 reasons why my victory is absolute. First, overwhelming distance to control the enemy. second speed that leaves the opponent no time to react, and finally power to finish it in one blow so the opponent can't do anything else. It's over. Or have you stopped hearing anything? When he thought the enemy had failed, then Q's voice slowly echoed, where exactly is the finish in one blow power? Contrary to what he wanted, Q was still firmly kneeling on the ground. His body was a bit bruised, but not significantly. He had successfully calculated everything he knew. Boss possesses a special lightning technique, so to minimize damage from electricity, I must avoid being hit directly in the body, no matter how good I am if my brain or heart is hit. Then, even healing magic wouldn't be able to save me. So I created a highly conductive circuit in my veins, leading the electricity from my arm down to my feet, then straight into the ground. Dissipating the electric current to minimize damage, doing this much was just enough to hold out. Q once again started deploying his power. He was more confident now it's his turn to counterattack. Boss scratched his head, still maintaining his contempt for him. It seems you had to risk your life just to endure that blow. But Q didn't pay much attention to his words. He continued to channel his internal energy to strengthen his physique. The unexpected happened. He couldn't execute the technique, and Q's body seemed to have no strength, collapsing forward. He looked at his two hands. His body was shaking violently at this moment. What's happening? I can't channel any strength into my body. Boss had already guessed it. He explained the mechanism of his technique. The absolute rule is that anyone hit by my violet lightning will be paralyzed and unable to move. Q still refused to give up. He raised the hand pierced by the knife to attack, accompanied by the exclamation, "This is bad." Boss's smug smile was displayed once again. He still kept his condescending attitude, thinking back, "You were still fine earlier, weren't you?" Boss, just like that, attacked him directly again. This time it seemed even more powerful than the last one. In the stands, the girl was so worried about him that she cried. Q was still trying to resist the continuous magical waves. He cursed under his breath. Damn it, he is truly strong. His unique magic truly has no openings. Now I understand why he is so arrogant. Even so, I've decided. I will win. That thought was just set when Xiao placed his hand on the ground. This is the final seed, and also my final spell. Manipulate plants. Grow protect tree. As soon as he finished his sentence, a huge tree immediately grew out, blocking Q's vision. He had calculated very carefully for this move. This type of tree absorbs and stores a huge amount of water from the ground. If used as a shield, the lightning bolt will be dissipated. Boss was still unfathomably confident. He believed that technique of his couldn't do anything. What about me? Along with that question was the shock in the depths of Chu's eyes. Everyone in the stands was now gasping in surprise. The protection tree just formed thanks to the magic of Kyo was now broken in two by Boss without being able to resist. Looking at the tree in front of him being destroyed, Q couldn't believe it and shouted, "Impossible." Boss walked over to him full of confidence. He continued to show his contempt. "Is that your final move?" Ending it with a pathetic defensive move. How miserable. But as he got closer to the tree, Boss noticed a mushroom sprouting from the trunk. Then, as if triggered by something, a forest of mushrooms began to sprout uncontrollably. Naturally, this shocked Boss, and he shouted in bewilderment, "What the hell is this?" Quill pulled the blade out of his palm and gave a cold laugh. "I didn't expect it to be this effective. Some plants and fungi have spores that grow rapidly after being struck by lightning. A forest burned to ash by lightning is the perfect opportunity for growth, since there's no competition, right? This form-flower mushroom is one of them. But that's not its only trait, Boss." Boss reflexively looked at the thousands of mushrooms growing. He still couldn't believe it. Soon after, a strange sensation spread throughout his body. It startled him. Boss looked at his arm. It felt like an electric current was running through him, and his whole body went numb. Quill seized the golden opportunity. This was it. He lunged forward with a punch fueled by all his might. Faced with this, Boss didn't worry at all. He was still smiling. Boss quickly launched a counterattack. He punched Quill straight on, sending him flying. Quill couldn't react in time to that counterblow. He went down instantly. Looking at Quill's slumped form, Boss looked at him with even more contempt. "Fool. It's obvious that in close quarters combat I'm leagues above you. My specialty magic is electricity control. If I use electricity to enhance my body and move at high speeds, that little trick is nothing." Quill's body trembled. He clenched his fists to hold himself up. He still couldn't believe it. "No way! Even after going this far, I still can't win." Boss's eyes sharpened. He lowered his voice, enunciating every word like a judgment. "Then you lose." As soon as he finished, Boss prepared to deliver the final blow to end him. But at that moment, Veronica appeared. She pointed her sword at Boss and demanded he stop. "That's enough. Isn't this going a bit too far, Professor Boss?" Boss paused for a moment, then let out a sarcastic laugh. He turned and pushed her sword aside. "Veronica, don't interfere when you're just a newbie." Quill was shivering. Over there, Quill also realized he had a savior, Professor Veronica. Veronica wanted everything to end right there. She reasoned, the match is already decided. Pushing him further will only cause him useless harm. Boss disagreed. This kid can heal his own wounds. He can still fight. Veronica continued to try and protect Quill, only if he still has mana left. He doesn't have enough mana anymore. The more he heard, the angrier Boss became. He wanted to attack Veronica too. He just lacks the will to fight. She wouldn't back down either. Veronica started gathering her aura, ready for combat. There was nothing left to discuss. The two of them lunged at each other, signaling a massive battle was about to break out. But fortunately, right at that moment, a voice rang out, stopping their intense desire to fight. "Enough, both of you!" Alnizam had appeared. He looked down at the two of them from above. Alnizam reminded them, "Letting you two squabble here is the most useless thing of all." He descended slowly, as light as a feather. Alnizam looked toward Boss and said calmly, "Boss, stop." He closed his eyes, his expression full of warning. Boss felt it too. His expression wasn't very comfortable, but he couldn't disobey that order. Boss scratched his head and finally agreed, "Fine." Alnizam then turned to Veronica. His expression changed completely compared to when he looked at Boss. "Veronica, I apologize for not explaining clearly." He raised his hand. He cleared his throat a few times to get everyone's attention. Alnizam officially announced, "The main content of the field training selection exam ends here." Everyone dispersed immediately. People didn't linger and slowly moved out of the arena. Quill was still having trouble healing himself. He grimaced in pain. "Damn it, I'm completely out of mana. My healing isn't progressing at all. I don't want to lose. Is the gap really this big?" Without a word, Veronica simply picked him up. Quill was extremely flustered and called her name with difficulty. "Professor, Veronica." She remained calm, comforting, and encouraging him. "I saw that you did very well. Don't push yourself anymore. Get some rest." Quill shyly hung his head. He whispered, "I understand." But in his heart, he still wasn't resigned. "Did very well, is that all? It's still not enough." As night gradually fell while walking on the road, Quill kept silently reflecting. That was the ability of a top-tier offensive mage, not just pure power, but the level of sophistication in tactics were on a completely different level. But even with them, humanity would still be wiped out. I need to be stronger. He walked to a room, opened the door, and looked inside, saying politely, "May I come in?" Alnizam was inside. He was very welcoming when Quill arrived. "I'm glad you came." He stroked his beard while asking after him with concern, "Your wounds seem to be doing okay." "Just as I predicted. Or rather not." Before he could ask any further, Quill explained directly, "Once my mana recovers, these few injuries will heal immediately." Alnizam laughed out loud. He affirmed, "Then participating in field training won't be a problem." Hearing this surprised Quill. He asked again to be sure, "I get to participate." Alnizam saw that as obvious. "You are the winner of the main event after all." "Of course. Besides me have Chias and Azika also passed, sir." Qui still doesn't seem to believe it. "But Professor the Boss said everyone failed, and I didn't win either." Alnizam understood and explained, "It's like that every year." This took Q by surprise again. "Every year, sir." Alnizam revealed the boss's true intent. "He says failing everyone this year is just to apply pressure and draw out the student's true potential. But in the end, he still lets a few pass. Field training is dangerous after all. That's just his way of being a teacher." Hearing this, Q thought the guy was just incredibly clumsy, but he also thought it made sense. In his past life, the boss was always on the front lines fighting for humanity. Without a doubt, the man was a hero. He fought to save the world. Even though Q couldn't stand his words or actions, the man had his own sense of pride. Not keeping Q waiting long, Alnizam quickly gave him his assignment. "Now, Q, you'll form a squad with students from other academies as an offensive mage, and you will carry out real monster suppression missions." Q was still stunned, silently repeating those 4 words to himself. Monster suppression. This was the first time he'd faced monsters since his regression. In his past life, 5 years later, these monsters were the direct cause of humanity's extinction. These very creatures. First, one has to consider their origin. Monster initially just referred to any creature that possessed magical power. Not all monsters were hostile toward humans. They sometimes attacked people, but that was just survival behavior, part of natural competition. If you understand their ecology, they can even be neighbors we can utilize. However, in about 2 years, the world will change. The blood moon. Monsters hit by that red moonlight become extremely brutal, and that's when the tragedy begins. Monsters will gather and start wiping out humanity just for the sake of slaughter. 2 years later, the Demon King descends, and humanity quickly falls into a losing position. Many people die and nations collapse. Offensive mages are highly valued on the battlefield, but for that very reason, they are the first to be sacrificed. The same thing happened to elite knights. Healers wouldn't reach the front lines. Once the defensive lines collapsed, there was nothing left but to be slaughtered by monsters. By the time I died, there was almost no one left to fight. In less than a few months, humanity would be extinct. Q clenched his fists, promising himself, I cannot let that tragedy happen again. I need to become stronger than anyone was in my past life and gain the power to resist the great monster invasion. And if possible, find the cause, the source of the blood moon that makes them so violent. Al-Nizam saw him lost in thought and stroked his beard, remarking, That's a lot of determination. Your eyes look just like they did the day we first met. He gently encouraged him, Just keep this up and you'll be fine. Q felt a bit anxious. Fine, is that what the professors think of field training? Al-Nizam walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, looking intrigued. Partly because of that, too. But I especially wanted to talk to you, Q. Q looked at him completely confused, like a deer in the headlights. After talking to Al-Nizam, Q headed to the meeting point for those selected, to get to the field training site. Now he and Azika were there just waiting for the last person, Sius. After waiting a while, there was movement. Sius arrived walking ahead of the big burly boss. Q stepped in front of him and spoke first. I heard that you're strict because you care about your students. The boss leaned in close to Q's face. Then he let out a fierce roar. He stood up straight, hands on his hips, his voice filled with aggression. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're just weak trash. If you can't even land a hit on me, don't go getting arrogant. Q was embarrassed by his attitude and whispered, yes, while complaining internally. His attitude hasn't changed at all. The boss walked past him, letting out a huff. If you understand, then focus on the field training. You idiot, but I'll thank you for looking after Sias. At that moment, Sias, who was behind him, also spoke up. Me too. Q was startled by his sudden appearance. Behind Sias, Q silently assessed. He's still really quiet. Sias clenched his hand into a fist and punched the air, showing his resolve. Thanks, Q. Because of you, I can give it my all in training and become even stronger. That's Professor Boss's lesson. As long as you survive and can take revenge, there's no harm done. Q shared that same energy. He raised his hand for a fist bump. Great. We have to keep getting stronger. Sias smirked happily and bumped his fist with Q's like a promise. After that, he quickly moved over to the boss. Q watched him go. He secretly felt lucky. Having more excellent offensive mages is a good thing. Like that the war against the monsters will surely go more smoothly. Veronica called out from a distance. Q, we should get going. Q happily responded, as he had been looking forward to this trip. On the way to the field training site inside the carriage, Veronica announced, We'll be arriving at the Danko forest soon. Let me confirm the details of this training. You will be tasked with hunting goblins in Danko forest. 3 students from Quathalik and Simburn will form a 4-person squad, with 1 teacher from one of the support schools. Azika had a question. Have the team members already been decided? Veronica confirmed. That's right. Azika is also on my team. Azika silently thought, that's better than strangers. But Professor Veronica is a bit scary. Veronica gave a brief overview of Q's teammates. Q's team is not trivial either. We're here. Veronica led the way, stepping off first and announcing, Let's go. It seems the participants from Simburn are already here. Quill stepped down from the carriage, remembering his past life and confirming, So it's Shinburn, huh? I knew about them from my past life, but we don't actually know each other. This is all so sudden. A sweet girl's voice rang out, Master Quill! Magi lunged forward and hugged him tightly. I've been waiting for this day. Her actions left everyone standing there in total shock. Quill was being squeezed until he couldn't breathe. Still trying to be polite, he held his hands up in the air. Wait, I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are. Magi realized she had been a bit too eager. She let go of him. Oh, is that so? Well, we didn't really have a proper talk back then, she said, formally introducing herself. I'm Magi Gonzan, the granddaughter of the principal of Aonazam Academy. After hearing her introduction, Quill realized who the girl was. His memories of Magi became crystal clear. Quill was slightly surprised and silently marveled. I never expected to reunite with the girl I treated at the principal's estate. Right here, Quill asked about her health. How have you been feeling since then? Magi flexed her muscles, wanting to prove she was perfectly fine. I'm totally okay now. I'm sorry I couldn't thank you properly back then. Quill quickly waved his hands. It's nothing. Besides, your grandfather already recommended me to the Aonazam Academy. Magi looked at him and pointed to herself, insisting, but I still want to find a way to repay this debt of gratitude. Since I didn't have a talent for magic, I went to Shinburn Academy and poured everything into training my swordsmanship. Because of that, I ended up at the top of the Academy's selection trials. Quill was stunned by her talent. He couldn't help but shout, Valedictorian, really! Magi shyly covered her smiling mouth. Turns out I have a knack for the sword. Quill could only let out a, wow, completely amazed. He looked at the petite girl in front of him silently, evaluating from someone bedridden to a top-ranked fighter in such a short time. Is she a monster or what? She walked up, grabbed his hand, and lifted it. I will definitely be useful to you, Master Quill. That's why we were put in the same team. After understanding her better, Quill happily agreed. If that's the case, then let's do our best together. Quill realized something then. So this is what the principal meant when he said, I'm counting on you. Magi noticed a carriage approaching them. She quickly pulled Quill's hand and ran, The people from High X Academy are here. Let's go say hello. Ezuka was also surprised by how quickly they bonded. They look like they're having fun, don't they? Veronica added. We should stir up some energy in our team, too. Magi dragged him to the carriage and started looking around. Where are our teammates, our Master Gen and Master Top here? Hearing that name, Quill reacted slightly. Master Gen, huh? A voice from inside the carriage replied calmly, Don't rush me, I'm coming out. The man finally stepped down, introduced himself, and asked his first question. I'm Jenin. Are you kids the students who will be joining my team? This man was the teacher from High X Academy, Gen Kaitot. Upon seeing him, Quill was incredibly excited. My master! He's the master who taught me healing magic in my past life. The best teacher I've ever known. He was so happy his body trembled. To be in the same team again. Behind Jen was someone else who urged him, Teacher, move aside a bit, I can't get down. When he stepped down, Magi greeted him first. That must be Master Top. I'm Magi Gonzan from Shinburn. Top pushed up his glasses and replied politely. Very nice to meet you all. After adjusting his glasses, Top clearly saw Quill and Magi's hands tightly clasped together, and it hit him like a lightning bolt. The excitement and joy vanished, replaced by indifference. Quill, however, didn't notice and happily introduced himself. I'm Quill from Aonazam. Top turned his face away, his tone disappointed and slightly contemptuous. An attack mage, huh? After everyone introduced themselves, Jen turned to leave, letting out a long yawn. All right, this is Jen's team. Do whatever you want. I'll just be observing. Magi saw his slacker attitude and was surprised. That's his way of working. Quill, used to this, just thought, Master is always like that. He quietly followed behind him. Quill made a suggestion. Can I call you Master? Jen was slightly surprised by the request. Why call me that? Quill quickly explained. I can use healing magic too, but I don't have a teacher right now, so I was thinking I could learn from Master Jen. Surprised to learn of his ability. An attack mage who knows how to use healing magic? I think I've heard a whisper about that. What a brilliant team arrangement this is. Quill asked again to confirm. Is that okay, Master? Jen didn't really care about the title accepting it. Sure, call me whatever you want. Overhearing the conversation, Magi chimed in. If you're going to call him that Q, then I'll call him Master too. She trailed after him like a little shadow, calling him back. Hey, wait up! Erica was once again stunned by Q's incredible ability to adapt, and their team was growing close so quickly. Veronica didn't want to lose, and she knew they couldn't afford to fall behind. During this subjugation campaign, each team would be assigned a specific sector. We'll use this tent as our base. The goblin territory lies a bit deeper, so Q-Magi and Master Yu should head out now. Just like in real combat, healers wouldn't be on the front lines. They'd stay back at base. That was the reason he hadn't participated in his past life. On the way, Magi wondered aloud. Even though you're a healer, Master, you're still coming to the front lines. Jen quickly explained, basically, I'm just here to supervise. I'm fine, just do whatever you guys want to do. I don't really like being tied down anyway. Magi picked up on his relaxed rhythm. Then I won't hold back at all. But you hesitated slightly, pointing toward her back. By the way, when you say don't hold back, Magi seemed to catch his drift, of course. She quickly reached for her weapon, gripping her massive blade with both hands. Confident and ready, she declared, with everything I've got, I'm going to swing this sword with all my might. After finishing off the monsters, Magi danced around joyfully, leaping right onto the top of a pile of monster carcasses she had just defeated, celebrating the victory. The stark contrast made Q wonder, is this really the same girl? The girl who had looked at him with such gentle eyes and called him Q. Magi lunged, swinging her giant greatsword with such a fierce, determined gaze that he couldn't help but stare in awe. This was Magi's swordsmanship. Every swing carried terrifying power. Perhaps she alone was enough to clear this entire place out. Before he could even snap out of it, Magi suddenly froze. Her eyes went wide with surprise as she watched the monsters closing in, unable to help but gasp. There are so many of them. Watching her, Jen couldn't help but remark, she's definitely impressive, but she leaves herself far too open. That young lady is great at offensive attacks, but she seems weak when surrounded. You need to provide backup for her. Q responded quickly, understood. He felt a surge of excitement deep down. Finally, he was about to fight against monsters. A monster lunged forward, its razor-sharp teeth bared, and a roar echoing through the area, nearly shattering the silence of the place. Seeing his expression tighten, Q whispered to himself, those terrifying monsters. A hand suddenly brushed gently against his shoulder from behind, making his spine tingle. A steady, calm voice drifted over, why are your shoulders so tense? Just relax. Xiao looked up deep in thought and slightly surprised. He didn't answer right away, but finally he gave a faint, friendly smile. Understood. Chu thought to himself. Just like back then, this person is still... Two fingertips touched directly, unleashing a blinding flash of power. Q had cast a body enhancement spell, his boots shifting slightly. His starting stance was ready for a burst of speed. Chu lunged forward, and with just a few nimble sword strikes, he had nearly wiped out half of the monsters. Two backs pressed against each other instantly. I'm counting on you, kid. Got it. Kill quickly seized the upper hand, his sword swinging with commanding authority, blood splattering all around. Jen seemed to relax, letting out a soft, relieved sigh. So this is what it's like to fight using healing magic. In the blink of an eye, the monsters were completely wiped out, sprawled across the ground. He thought to himself, not bad at all. Great it works on monsters, too. Q picked up the knife and pondered for a long moment. The blade Professor Veronica gifted him was incredibly sharp, completely different from Uncut's. Uncut, standing nearby, shouted loudly. What are you muttering about after stealing that? Magi jumped for joy, her heart blooming with happiness, her strength bursting forth like a spring combined with her skillful swordsmanship. Sir Q is truly amazing. Jen, standing in the middle, suddenly spoke up. All right, that's enough for the first day. Let's head back. The smile on her lips faded. Magi looked down, resigned. I actually feel so much lighter, she said. Q continued. That's all thanks to the master. He mused. If you were to rank healing magic, it would involve metrics like the severity of wounds or the types of ailments that can be cured. But the master's strength is his natural recovery speed so effortless that you don't even realize magic is being used. Because of that, people who aren't healers, I would never understand just how incredible it is. I had asked him about that once. Suddenly, he waved his hand with a faint smile. I can't just go around showing off like that. As long as they're healed, that's all that matters. Ku walked away, leaving behind leaves silently falling in the lonely forest. The world had no idea, but the greatest healer in the world is Genkai Top. Even so, this was a pretty good party. As the four sat huddled around the dining table, Jen spoke up directly, breaking the quiet atmosphere around the table. We hit our mark today. Top suddenly chimed in. Everyone returned without a scratch, so I didn't even have to do anything. Jen raised his bowl high, praising him. Not at all providing recovery. Through meals at the base is also a healer's duty, isn't it, Top? It was Top's special recovery soup seasoned by Jenner. Seeing this, Top looked up and said softly, You've done a great job. The old man scoffed, his voice polite yet prideful. That flavor is partly thanks to my special seasoning, you know. Maji sat opposite them, grinning broadly, her voice flattering. Master, you are truly amazing. Not only as a healer, but you also seem to understand the front lines so well. I wonder why. Hearing that, Jen just nodded in satisfaction, explaining, the front lines are where the most wounded people are. If you treat them there, you naturally accumulate the basic knowledge, Top continued. Master often travels to many different places. That's why he rarely teaches formal classes. The master took a small sip of soup, savoring it. Aren't those places very dangerous? I have confidence in my ability to run away. Jen spoke confidently, raising his hand. He said that, but when someone needs saving, he never runs away. Losing the master would be a heavy blow to humanity, not just because he is an excellent healer, but also because he is one of the few who knows what to do in actual combat. Q thought to himself, fate might have changed for me and the others, but there is still time until that incident happens. His gaze tightened, more thoughtful than ever. Not knowing what was wrong, he picked up the bowl and gulped the soup down, and swore to himself that in this lifetime, I will absolutely not let the master die. Q lifted the bowl and drank quickly. Seeing that, Jen said shyly, You've got quite an appetite, don't you? Have another bowl, okay? The master is truly wonderful. The atmosphere in the small tent at this moment was more lively than ever, and meanwhile, someone was quietly adjusting their army in the dead of night. A hand reached out, revealing an eye emitting a massive surge of power, the power of the crimson moon right here. The monsters grinned savagely, their eyes red and bloodshot. At that same moment, a massive foot stepped out. He was one of the higher-level monsters. The next day, we set out again to destroy goblins. We shared experiences from yesterday's battle, and our teamwork improved noticeably. We once said at this rate, the mission could be completed by tomorrow. But the three of them stood straight with unhappy expressions, their feet still on the soft green grass. Jen called out, causing Q and Magi to turn their heads simultaneously. Let's head back. Magi suddenly countered with a questioning tone. Why? We haven't even taken down a single one today. Quill couldn't help but wonder what was going on ahead. Ren didn't answer, but calmly explained, there's not a single trace of anything. Goblins are extremely territorial. If there were intruders, they would have swarmed out to attack like they did yesterday, but we've come this far, and we still haven't seen a single one. A voice rang out, Master, have you noticed what's happening? He sighed, lowered his voice, and replied, I don't know. But on the battlefield, you should trust your instincts. Ren turned and waved his hand, ordering, That's it for today. Head back. While you're at it, call another nearby group to regroup. Magi looked up and instinctively spoke, I believe Professor Veronica's group has a base nearby. Hearing this, Ren turned his head and gave a faint wry smile, his eyes crinkling. You're very well informed, aren't you? Let's go. Quill stepped forward, scouting the situation little by little. The three of them walked through the desolate mountain forest. There wasn't a single animal living there. Their behavior was completely abnormal compared to their usual habits. This feels awful. Maggie went ahead, pushing aside the branches to lead the way. We'll be out to the road near the base soon. The sunlight was gradually shining brightly through the leaves, creating a warm atmosphere. I can't stop thinking about my past life. Even though I know it's impossible, but... His face darkened. He saw a small hand, bound tightly with a thick rope. A small face blackened, a smile staring down at the ground below. It was Erica. She was tied tightly to a straight wooden pillar. Milao rushed forward, waving her arms, shouting excitedly, I'll save you right now. She stepped forward quickly, not noticing her small feet were nearing danger. Magi quickly tumbled into a mud-trap, dirt smearing her face. Quill from a distance immediately shouted. She pulled something out from behind. With a determined look, she quickly pulled it out of the ground. She grabbed her spear to shield herself, putting on a deep smile along with a reassuring phrase. I'm okay. The two of them were frozen in place, speechless. A trap, and they used Erica as bait. While Quill hadn't even recovered his senses, Ren stood right in front of him, shouting loudly, Hey, more of them are swarming in! A sharp spear flew toward them. The two immediately countered. Quill, furious, yelled, We're surrounded! The monsters charged in with great momentum. Just then, Magi struggled and crawled out of the pit. Quill's eyes were now cold and terrifying. He lowered his voice and said, We're surrounded. The monsters kept stepping closer, fearless. Quill frowned, cursing under his breath. How cunning, they're hunting humans. This is just like the movement of monsters after the red moon. No, that can't be right. The red moon shouldn't appear for another 2 years. Could that tragedy have already begun? Erica tied up, suddenly groaned uncomfortably. He turned his head, surprised, thinking to himself, she's still alive. There was no time to think about that now. He had the power to fight for moments like this. Maji held her great sword, her heart aching, telling herself it's so fortunate she's still alive. But Quill jumped down and shouted, "Leave that to me, combining plant manipulation." With what he had learned, he opened his mouth and shouted the command, "Manifest!" The monsters, hearing that, didn't give in and let out a guttural roar. Quill turned his head, saw her trembling with fear, and said bluntly, "Magi, you don't need to be on the front line. Standing behind the melee unit makes it easier to exploit their weaknesses." She heard this and replied quickly, "Understood. More importantly, channel your energy precisely." Her whole body burned brilliantly. Her footsteps suddenly faltered as if she couldn't believe what she was witnessing, and she launched a wide-range attack to break their formation. Magi didn't stand still either, declaring, "Watch my full power strike." From behind, suddenly one tried to sneak an attack from behind. Suddenly, with just one slash of his sword, he quickly took that one down. "Quickly," a voice rang out. "I'll provide cover. I won't let a single one slip through." The one that was left behind, right behind her, lay sprawled on the grass. Ren from afar didn't skimp on praise. "Well done, you two. I'll rescue her." Quill quickly ran off, answering loudly, "I'm counting on you, master." Suddenly he turned his head. A chilling sensation suddenly surged. This terrible feeling. His pupils immediately dilated. Quickly the effects of the red moon included making them become ferocious. Plus, Ren quickly ran toward Erica. He stepped quickly, not noticing that beneath the ground there was a change. A tall figure immediately emerged, blocking the view, causing the monsters to coordinate in packs. "It's an ogre. It had been hiding underground. This isn't good. The distance is too far. I won't make it in time." It raised its hand, clenching its fist toward Ren. In his past life, it had been like this too. "Master never abandons those who are injured. From now on, I will be the greatest healer in the world." He witnessed the expression, furrowing teeth, gnashing together. No matter how excellent a healer is, if they keep living like that, then I would have to waste many lifetimes to solve it. The fist was nearing right before his eyes. A helpless voice rang out, "Master!" Ren also paused slightly, saying nothing. That monster stretched out its hand powerfully, stepping forward quickly. With an air of majesty more imposing than ever, he offered a faint smile and asked himself quietly, "Wait, what just happened here? Was that physical enhancement? Did Master just use a healing spell to attack? Look at that monster." With eyes glowing red and sharp, the monster tried viciously to wipe out everything around it, swinging its arms wildly toward Jen. Luckily, Jen nimbly dodged its feet. Leaping off the ground, leaving behind a dusting of soil on his cloth shoes, he dashed behind the monster and unleashed his secret sneak attack technique. Jen placed his hand on the back of its neck, tapped it gently, and said, "Farewell, then. Sleep tight." A beam of blue light shot straight through the back of the monster's neck, filling it with terror. It instantly sensed the danger from behind and frowned. What? What was that? But with just one swift, clean strike, Jen knocked the monster out, causing it to sprawl across the lush green grass. Everyone rushed toward Jen, shouting, "Master, that move just now." He didn't explain in detail, just lowered his voice and replied, something like that. A good teacher can learn from their own students, too. Though I just thought of that one myself. Kill and Magi both beamed, showering him with praise. "As expected," Magi quickly added, "That was so cool." Jen reached up to untie his gear, regaining his composure. "For now," he ordered, "let's retreat while we still can." Aisha looked over with a somber expression. The monsters were still struggling with each other. She asked in a low voice, "With Master's power, couldn't you have just wiped them all out?" Jen sighed helplessly, explaining, "Foolish child, I only put the ogre to sleep. I am a healer. Even if it's a monster, I have no intention of hurting it. When it wakes up, it will just feel more refreshed, that's all." Qui Ron from behind, looking at his back, a faint smile touching the corner of his lips. "As expected of Master." We broke through the Opland's encirclement. After taking down a few pursuers, it seemed they had given up. The four of them stopped in a clearing. "We can probably rest a bit here," Qui said softly. Jen reached out, struggling to heal Azika. He called out in a low voice, "Hey, kiddo, Wake up. She suddenly opened her eyes full of surprise. Ezuka sat up and the first thing she asked was, Where is this? Maji immediately reassured her, you're safe now. Kui stepped forward, bowing respectfully, and asked, Sorry to ask right when you've just woken up, but what happened? Why were you all alone, Ezuka? Ezuka's face showed clear panic. She clutched her head in fear and asked back, Alone. Yesterday's expedition went very smoothly. I didn't hold anyone back, but every time I let my guard down, something bad happens. This morning when I woke up, Professor Veronica had disappeared. Mentioning Professor Veronica again, Ezuka recounted everything. She had left a note that said, Wait for orders. But she didn't say when she'd be back, so I was really worried. But while I was discussing it with the other two, I don't know how it ended up with me going to find her. Aisha's face darkened as she looked at her skeptically. They pressured you, and you couldn't say no, could you? Aisha thought to herself. That's just like Ezuka. But this can't be taken lightly. Just one wrong step and you could lose your life. Are any of us prepared enough to face a situation so different from class or training? Aisha didn't answer but continued anxiously. After entering the forest, I smelled something sweet. And when I came to it was already like this. Jen held his head helpless. He suddenly spoke up. So the Oplins used a sleeping drug, that trap from earlier. And the fact that they're working with an ogre. What on earth is going on? No, now is not the time to think about that. In any case, your base is nearby. Let's go rendezvous with the other two. The four of them lined up and moved out quickly. Aisha, who was in front, suddenly froze and whispered, Over here. Wait. She looked up, showing a flash of panic. Looking at the chaos before her, she said flatly, The base has been destroyed. Magi suddenly spoke up. I looked into this before. Oplins have a very high sense of territory, meaning they usually don't leave their domain. That's why the base was placed outside of it. It should have been safe, and yet it still ended up like this. Why, pondering for a long time, actively attacking humans. That's also a trait of the monsters that appeared after the Red Moon. Right now it's unexplainable. Jen crouched down to scout the surrounding situation, then said, There are no signs of a struggle. It looks like the two of them ran off somewhere. We'll split up. I'll go find those two. The three of you group up with Toph and get out of the forest. Don't think your base is safe. Stay alert. The reply came back quickly. Understood. We hurriedly headed back to our base. Kui pushed the door open and rushed in, calling out loudly, Toph, are you okay? Toph heard the noise. He was busy cooking and froze for a second, then replied, You're back. Lunch isn't even finished yet. Magi could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Thank goodness you're still safe. Toph didn't understand what was going on yet and asked, What's going on? Kui turned and walked away with Aisha calling back to explain, Later, we have to leave right now. Suddenly, Aisha held them back eyes wide. Both were taken by surprise. Facing the scene in front of them, she whispered, It looks like we're being followed. Aisha's jaw dropped in shock as she shouted, What are we supposed to do? Aisha froze as if she had just guessed his plan and asked, Wait, you mean... He turned around the corner of his mouth, curling up as he said softly, Take it down. The three of us together, I believe we can win, while the monsters loomed tall right before their eyes. With a determined and intimidating gaze, he carefully watched the monsters facing the massive horde. The three of us coordinating is our only chance of survival, he reminded his teammate. Magi, don't charge in too recklessly like before. Just use your attacks to support our vanguard. No sooner said than done, Quill took action. He left the vanguard position to Ukalom and kept issuing the best strategies. Ezuka, use your fire to block the goblins' advance. But conversely, Ezuka felt incredibly insecure. But someone like me, I was captured so easily just a moment ago. Even so, Quill smiled, encouraging her. It's okay. Your flames will be incredibly useful. Feeling acknowledged, Ezuka couldn't help but be surprised, though she was still anxious and struggling to regain her composure. Not wanting to let Quill down, Ezuka put her all into summoning fire magic. In an instant, the goblins were surrounded by flames. Terrified of being burned alive, they started to retreat one by one. Ezuka beamed and shouted, I did it! But before Quill could heave a sigh of relief for long, he immediately noticed something unusual. Good. Now we won't be overwhelmed by that massive wave of goblins all at once anymore. From the wall of fire, a sturdy, thick hoof stepped out. The monster's tight muscles forced the flames to retreat. It was Ott. He strode out intentionally taunting them. Quill was a bit surprised. Turns out it was in a completely different league compared to the regular goblins. After realizing this, he ordered the wooden figure Ukulom to charge while directing Azika to coordinate her fire attacks smoothly. She quickly took the order, got it. The wooden puppet, wreathed in flames, lunged at Ott. The fire spread onto him, causing him to roar in pain. Seizing the opportunity, Quill turned to call for backup Magi. Magi quickly seized the moment. I'm on it. She swung her sword, knocking the goblin off balance until he tumbled onto the ground. Magi happily high-fived Azika to celebrate. Great coordination. Quill, however, still didn't dare to relax. The coordination was certainly great, but what made him hesitate was that Ott kept getting back up. It seemed like it wasn't enough yet. Quill was sharp enough to recognize the monster's strength. Regeneration. Magi started to feel worried. Do we really have to keep doing this forever, until it can't revive anymore? Quill didn't panic, only deep in thought. No. I wonder if there's a limit to its regenerative power. There's no guarantee we can take it down if we keep attacking like this. If we're going to finish this, we need a more reliable method. But then Azika screamed in panic, pulling him back to reality. Something's coming! Quill, watch out! A powerful blast of energy came flying, but when Quill calmly opened his eyes, right in front of him was a blade. That was it. A monster was attacking him. More goblins. Looking further, he could see Ott holding them in his hands, ready to throw them. Quill didn't waste time sending that monster to the afterlife. Damn, these snipers are annoying. Azika quickly sensed another monster flying down from above. They're back! Magi forcefully ran up and kicked it away. She seemed to have a plan of her own. I'll send them back. No sooner had she spoken than Magi sent the monster flying into the distance. Get out of here! This moment. This was the time for her to prove her reliability. Master Quill, looking at your expression, it seems you've already thought of a plan. In that case, leave this to me from here on out. Quill could finally act with peace of mind. I'm counting on you. He placed all his trust in his teammates, blocking the massive number of goblins with Azika and Ukulom's area of effect attacks, while Magi would deflect the weapons being thrown at them. With nothing left to worry about, Quill dove into close combat with Ott. Now I just have to deal with this monster. It quickly sensed his presence, but Quill was a step faster, dodging the attack. Looking from afar, all that could be seen was dust and smoke at the battle site. Ott kept missing his attacks, and in return Quill gave him a tattoo in his lower abdomen. This drove him into a frenzy, grinding his teeth. Ott roared with a fury that shook the forest. The wound on his chest inflicted by Quill healed the next second. Even the cut on his wrist quickly recovered. But before Ott knew it, Quill was already behind him. You're wide open! He channeled magic right behind Ott. Ott, this is the final blow! Quill didn't hesitate, using magic to defeat him in one move, a sudden surge of energy. Ott's heart began to ache intensely. His whole body trembled as he let out a weak moan. His eyes rolled back, tears started streaming out, and the scene before them suddenly turned gruesome. Blood splattered everywhere. The result was obvious just by looking. Quill flashed a triumphant smile. The battle was over. Ott collapsed onto the grass. Finally, he could heave a sigh of relief. By forcing the monster's regeneration to overwork, the sudden surge of life energy causes its body to explode. It can't regenerate from that. Done, he turned around and arrogantly declared, Now the only thing left is to wipe out the remaining goblins. Following his declaration, each monster was sent to the eternal void. Bodies were scattered, heads rolling on the ground. The final battle had finally come to an end. Before them lay a battlefield, piled high with monster corpses. They could finally relax their bodies. Azika, having fought until now, was exhausted. Only Magi was still full of energy. Rushing over, Q excitedly said, We crushed it, didn't we? But he didn't hold back praise for the girls, adding, You guys worked together so well. Azika still seems a bit shaken, but I'm glad we managed to handle it. Q was still worried, though. It wasn't over yet. In another part of the forest, a massive tornado was tearing through everything, and Q's group could see it too. He realized it immediately. That's CJ Ut, Q thought, and then he took the lead, heading straight toward the swirling winds. We should be able to regroup with the others. At that same moment, CJ Ut was stabilizing his magic when a voice made him look toward the sound. CJ Ut, are you okay? Seeing the group was still in one piece, CJ Ut felt relieved. I'm glad you guys are all right. Not far from them, someone standing on a pile of monsters spoke up. Hey, this is the boss, he thought, feeling a bit confused. Something's off about this formation. Where are the professor and the others? Suddenly, Jen appeared from nowhere and replied, We're right here. Seeing him, Quill eagerly ran over. Master, you found both of them. Jen explained, "You could say that." Just then a tornado kicked up, so we headed that way. He patted Quill on the shoulder, not hiding his satisfaction. "Everyone did a great job. I trusted you all, and I'm so happy no one got hurt." The whole group beamed at the praise. Everyone was smiling from ear to ear until Boss chimed in to lighten the mood. "It feels like everything's over already. But we're still missing someone, right?" Hearing that, Q checked again. "You're right, Veronica-sensei." Boss still had his doubts, thinking, "I'm not too worried about her, but we can't just leave without saying anything." Jen immediately proposed a plan. "I'll keep an eye on the rest of the students. Anyone capable can split up and search, right?" He seemed to agree. "Fine. CJ Ut, and the next one tasked is Q. You go find her." The two guys immediately saluted. "Yes, sir." A while later, Q was on his lost person rescue mission, enhancing his hearing to sense any living presence. Suddenly, a sound echoed near him, but he wasn't skilled enough to distinguish it yet, so he had to search manually. Looking toward the sound, he saw Veronica's back. "Found you." "Good. She seems safe." Q quickly called out, "Veronica-sensei." In her hand, she was holding a glowing red stone. Veronica heard his voice and slowly turned her head. The moment he saw it, Q's expression darkened. "That is, could it be the same as the red moon?" She quickly tucked the stone into her pocket. Veronica frowned and asked, "Q, what are you doing here?" He hadn't even regained his composure. "No." And then he remembered the main issue. "What am I doing? I'm looking for the professor. The monsters went berserk. The field trip must be over." But strangely, she coldly brushed him off. "Is that so? Then let's head back." Noticing something was wrong, Q called out after her. "Wait!" he asked straight out. "What was that stone just now?" But Veronica gave a dismissive answer. "It's nothing." Q didn't believe her and kept pressing. "You say it's nothing. And what have you been doing all this time, leaving the other students behind?" The more he asked, the more worried he became, his body starting to tremble. "Please give me an answer." Veronica stopped in her tracks, hit by his words. She lowered her voice, filled with murderous intent. "Sorry, but I don't think I'll choose that method." Veronica's eyes showed clear intimidation. "It would be better if you kept quiet about this." Q didn't know how things ended up like this, but in the end she turned and walked away without looking back. "Don't worry, I won't do anything bad." After that, I couldn't say anything more to Professor Veronica. Even if I wanted to keep questioning her, I didn't have the power to. More than anything, I wasn't ready to suspect Veronica-sensei, my comrade from my past life. And just like that, the field training ended. The next day back from the training, Q was still in a confused state of mind. "I barely slept last night. Does this mean Professor Veronica is connected to the red moon from my past life?" As he was thinking, he saw something ahead. By the gate, two people were having a secretive conversation. That someone was none other than the person Q was just thinking about, Veronica-sensei. He quickly suppressed his magic to hide his presence, sneaking into a corner to eavesdrop. "Can't let her find me." The man standing opposite Veronica asked quietly, "I see I've received your request to leave the academy. Where are you planning to go?" But she only gave a clipped reply, "Personal business." Q's mind raced. "Personal business outside the academy? It probably has to do with that red stone." "That's it," he thought, and made up his mind. "It seems I have no choice but to follow her." Veronica left the academy immediately after, and Q became a pro-stalker, trailing behind her. Q felt like he was acting too rashly. "I just followed her without thinking." He was so lost in thought that in the blink of an eye he lost sight of Veronica. "If I guessed wrong, I'm just a creep." Memories of his past life flooded back into Q's mind. "But I can't keep worrying about being misunderstood, especially when there's a chance to learn about that tragedy." He swore to himself that he would clear Veronica's name, but something strange made Q look around in confusion. "Wait, where? This is the first time I've returned here since my past life. After graduating from the academy, the monster outbreaks were so intense that I was deployed all over the battlefield. I'm pretty sure I stopped by this town back then, too." As he was thinking, he stopped and looked at Veronica. If I recall correctly, she was just buying bread at a small bakery. Memories of my past life came flooding back. I was holding a piece of bread in my hand just like that. He looked at it, his heart lighting up. "Honey bread, huh?" Without waiting, he brought it to his mouth to take a bite. This exquisite flavor made his eyes sparkle. It was delicious, and Veronica agreed. "This place is quite famous." he said, taking the opportunity to strike up a conversation. I'm from the countryside, so I almost never get to buy food like this. You were born into a merchant family in the city, so you must eat this kind of stuff all the time, right? Veronica calmly replied. That's true, but it's not really because of my background. My rule is that whenever I see a bakery, I have to stop in. This statement made him even more curious. A rule. He didn't hide his interest anymore, and Veronica slowly began to share her life story. From the trips I took with my parents to growing up and throwing myself onto battlefields, I've met so many people. Her eyes were suddenly filled with strangely deep thoughts, and I almost never see them a second time. Even if I do, they've changed so much that they seem like different people. But for that very reason, I set a rule for myself. I don't want to have any regrets when that happens, so I forbid myself from ever saying the words later. Since that was the case, he didn't need to be hesitant anymore. He said bluntly, so that's it. No wonder you're always so straightforward when you talk, to the point where you scare everyone off. This piece of information took her by surprise. I didn't expect you to think of me that way. But then Veronica changed the subject. Also, I don't know when I might die. He didn't like talking about this. Don't say such pessimistic things. But she flatly denied his words. I'm not being pessimistic, and I don't intend to die. I'm just living my life to the fullest in the present. Suddenly her voice softened. But... She looked at him with expectation. In that case, will you protect me? He, from his past life, didn't hesitate to agree. Okay. I promise. Returning to reality, his heart ached a little as he thought back. He stood in the middle of the street, tormenting himself. In the end, he had still let Veronica die. This time, I swear I will protect her. The more he thought about it, the more determined he became, and to do that, he needed to find the truth, the proof, with these very eyes. So he followed Veronica more closely. She began to walk into a hidden corner behind a building. He saw her standing in front of a large iron gate, which made him even more suspicious. Everything looked shady. Inside, he couldn't stop worrying. Will you be okay, Veronica? I need to strengthen my presence concealment skill. A moment later, Veronica stepped inside. Naturally, he couldn't stay behind, so he sat in a corner by the wall. He heard another person's voice. We've been waiting for you. A person cloaked in black was standing in front of her. I am very sorry for calling you to a place like this, but this is an important matter. The person took off their hood, revealing purple hair. It was en route. She looked full of schemes. Now about the item we discussed. Veronica remained silent, just looking at the other person. A moment later, she pulled out a red stone, making en route gasp. Is this? She quickly snatched the stone, but a second later she frowned slightly. En route held the stone up full of joy. How wonderful! She then turned to flatter Veronica. You truly are talented. Yes, of course. I have always believed that. Perhaps he had begun to hear the information he wanted. With this, the greatest wish of our church. En route couldn't stop herself from revealing the plan. We are one step closer to the red moon now. Those words made his face darken. He immediately connected all the events. I knew it. This really is related to the red moon and this church. His face was as dark as could be. The spell he was using was starting to wear off. Veronica sensed something unusual a second later, but he realized it only then. Damn it! My presence concealment skill has worn off. Without thinking twice, Veronica grabbed her sword and lunged straight at him. He was completely doomed, his eyes wide with fear. He could only shout, Professor Veronica! She used her body, which couldn't stop trembling, to shield him. So you did follow me after all, didn't you? The dragon in front of them grew increasingly ferocious. At that moment, there were footsteps approaching from afar. I told you, didn't I, that you were supposed to come alone? En route held the quartz in her hand, looking regretful. I am very sad that you broke our agreement. I really thought our cult was about to gain another leader. Hearing that, Veronica swung her sword coldly, cutting a line through the air. Let me be clear, this was just an accident. That attitude made the woman quickly try to smooth things over. Oh my, so I jumped to conclusions. If that's the case, we just need to get rid of that guy over there. The cult would be very happy to welcome you. He was startled by this remark. Conversely, Veronica pointed her sword forward and replied bluntly, I refuse. I only came here to investigate. En route narrowed her eyes, assessing her. I have no intention of sacrificing my precious student. Seeing the tense situation, he hurriedly stood up. Professor Veronica, I am sorry, but I need to know what is going on. Veronica immediately turned around, interrupting him. It is my fault for not explaining it sooner that day. I sensed something strange in the forest. What I found was a creature going berserk, its eyes flashing with a cold, unsettling light. Right before her, beneath the grass, lay a red stone. Veronica picked it up and... This stone, this feeling. She tightened her grip, channeling her magic into it, and as it began to glow, Anroot appeared as if she'd been waiting for a long time. I didn't expect, she said, to find another fellow traveler in a place like this. She clasped her hands in a prayer-like gesture. This must be divine guidance, a testament to the mission I've been entrusted with. Sensing the threat, Veronica immediately became guarded. Who are you? Anroot smiled and stepped closer. I'd love to tell you more, but we have rules. She raised a finger, lowering her voice. If you want to learn about that stone and about us, there are 2 conditions. Before she could even respond, the woman rattled on. First, you must continue to make it glow to prove your worth. Second, you must tell no one. And you must go to the designated location alone to prove your trustworthiness. Anroot placed a hand over her chest, feigning regret. I apologize for testing you like this. Veronica kept her eyes fixed on her, but the woman continued. I truly hope you become one of us. Back in the present, she flatly refused the offer, so I decided to infiltrate them to investigate undercover. Recalling her previous attitude toward Q, I thought I made it clear that I wouldn't let anything happen to you. But she just turned away coldly. It's fine. I told you I wouldn't let anything bad happen. Hearing this, Q behind her trembled slightly. That's still not enough of an explanation, she said softly. Veronica continued. You're right. Sorry about that. Q finally let out a sigh of relief, but then, I'm just glad you're not a bad person. Professor Veronica. Anroot from across the way slowly interrupted. So, that means your desire to join our cult was just a lie. Now I'm even more disappointed. No sooner had she finished speaking than she dropped the stone into the water, followed by a voice filled with regret. I didn't expect to have to dispose of someone so talented. Q immediately sensed that something was wrong. That stone, the one you took from Professor Veronica. Did you throw it into the water? Suddenly the stone flashed with red light from the depths and the massive Octodorako began to awaken. Even the surrounding monsters seemed to be controlled by something. The water churned violently as a swarm of monsters roared and rose from below. Anroot quietly retreated into the shadows, clapping her hands and exclaiming excitedly, How marvelous! Even within the cult, those who can grant such wild power are rare. Watching the monsters before him, Q was stunned. A water dragon? Is it really this powerful? Veronica carefully calculated the number. 1, 2, 3, 8 of them. Hearing this, Q immediately interjected, I'll handle half. She firmly refused and lunged forward. No. Veronica gripped her sword tightly. That won't be necessary. Magic surged from the blade as Veronica spun and swung Magic Sword Gale Raid. A series of razor-sharp slashes tore through the air. They headed straight for the water dragon. Q was frozen in shock by the sight, as expected of Professor Veronica. At that moment, a cold, sharp gleam flashed in Veronica's eyes. The body of one of the water dragons collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, she leaped away just in time. Q ran over concerned, Are you okay? Veronica caught her breath and replied, I'm fine. Seeing the body still twitching, she was momentarily shocked. No way. It took that hit head-on and it's still alive. Even with high regeneration, how can it not die instantly after being decapitated? The heads quickly grew back, leaving both of them horrified. It's regenerating too. No healing magic could do that. At that moment, Q pulled out his daggers ready to fight. Something's not right. Suddenly, a water dragon lunged at him, headbutting toward the ground. Q quickly dodged. He spun around, swinging his daggers, but the blades stopped against the beast's flesh. Q struggled to pull the daggers out. This skin is so soft. I knew it. He immediately hugged the creature's body. In that case, Professor Veronica, I have a trick I want to try. Please stand back. Veronica didn't argue and stepped away. I understand, but don't overdo it. Q used his physical enhancement power, releasing his limits, and shouted, Just a little bit. He dug his feet into the ground, fingers clawing into the dragon's scales, and with a heave, Q lifted it up, revealing a giant Octodorako. Come on out, come out. Only then did Veronica see it clearly. So that's it? I thought it didn't die even after being decapitated. Looking at the Octodorako before her, she shuddered. Those weren't heads. They were tentacles. The giant things that appeared were mollusks. Octodorico. Familiar footsteps approached. So, you saw through the dragon's true form in an instant. Anrut placed a hand over her chest and sighed. How wonderful. Ah, wait. Not wonderful at all. With that, she raised her voice. The cult doesn't look for combat prowess. If I don't eliminate you all here, it will be troublesome. Anrut slowly pulled out an object. If this keeps up, I'll be going against the cult's wishes. A mysterious cult member, Anrut, pulled out a scepter and declared, Therefore I, Anrut, will take the liberty of handling this myself. Q seemed to have anticipated this. Professor Veronica, can you handle that monster for me? Remembering her moves from before, he explained, Your magic sword will be able to deal with that soft body. Even though this was more efficient, Veronica still felt uneasy. She agreed, but she couldn't let her student face danger alone. Suddenly, she grabbed his hand. A surge of power flowed from his body, quickly enhancing his physical strength. Once done, he smiled and said, I'll be right back after I take them down. Veronica stood there, stunned by his words. Stay safe until then, okay? A small smile played on her lips as she muttered to herself, That student of mine is quite daring, isn't he? Just then, Veronica drew her sword and stepped forward. Fine, but you have to be careful about one thing. She leaned back and whispered something very quietly. The name was perhaps 2 syllables. Q's eyes widened in shock. No way. Hearing that Veronica reminded him, You're the one who proved it wasn't impossible. Wait, really? Realizing what she meant, he immediately bolted. I understand. Anrut stood there calmly watching. That was fast. A smug smile twisted her lips. In that case, I'll... Just then, Q lunged with his blade. Anrut blocked the attack easily, leaving him momentarily stunned. She blocked it. Watching him attack again with reckless abandon, Anrut looked thrilled. It seems you have some amazing talent, too. Her eyes darted to the side for a split second, and both of them paused their attacks. Anrut touched a cut on her face. She'd been grazed. Her fingers gently traced the fresh blood. That actually hurt. A stream of energy radiated from her fingertips. Let me heal myself, shall we? Just then, Veronica stepped forward. The stone pulsed with a passive color vibrating at the same frequency as offensive magic. You use the reverse method. In other words, he is... Watching the wound slowly mend, she immediately realized, just like you, a combat healer. That information left Q stunned for a moment. A combat method using healing magic. Did you come up with that on your own? Anrut held her head high and explained, Of course not. How could someone like me ever come up with something like that? The staff in her hand glowed. However, even a wretch like me... Anrut flicked her wrist, and the ground exploded instantly. Can achieve this thanks to the teachings of the cult. Can achieve this. Q's eyes were locked on the staff. So it's existed since back then? A combat style for healers. Recalling his past self, he felt deep regret. I should have fought with my own hands back then. Q trembled, gripping the hilt of his blade. Just how far have they actually come? But before him, Anrut continued. It looks like you had that talent from the very beginning. I'm actually quite jealous. Thinking of a mysterious person, she laughed with a raspy voice. I really want you to meet him. At this point, Veronica looked excited. What do you think? Are you interested in the cult? Q cut her off, furious. Are you kidding me? He clenched his fists and said in a low voice, I will never become one of you. His eyes suddenly flashed with a red light. Not even in my next life. A flash of light streaked past Anrut's eyes as energy surged from her body. What a pity. As soon as she finished speaking, she lunged forward. Anrut swung her staff with a twisted grin. Then I guess I'll have to kill you after all. Q gritted his teeth and took the unexpected blow. He staggered, blocking her immense strength. Physical enhancement. When you use it like that, it's actually quite powerful. Q thought about their mysterious appearance and that red stone earlier. The cult. Their bodies and energy are in a state of opposition. His pupils flashed healing magic and offensive magic. There are too many things I don't understand. Anrut was still aggressively trying to fight, but all he needed to do was interrogate her and he'd have all the answers. He gritted his teeth and pushed her back with all his might. The sudden burst of power sent her flying. If I can pull this off, maybe I can avoid that tragedy. Taking the opportunity. He spun around and kicked Anrut straight in the chest. Caught off guard by the counterattack, she was sent reeling, yet she just kept smiling with that same ecstatic look. At this rate, it looks like I might actually lose. Anrut suddenly raised her staff high. But I've got the cult backing me up. The red stone immediately pulsed with light, enhancing her physical form. Her pupils shifted to a glowing crimson. One of her arms swelled to a monstrous-size veins bulging along her cheek. Even though her body was being warped, Enrut let out a thrilled roar. Amazing! Q already felt that something was wrong. This was clearly far beyond the ordinary physical enhancement of healing magic. He shouted at her, "Who taught you that kind of magic?" Hearing that, Enrut respectfully placed her hand over her heart. Everything is thanks to the teachings of the cult. She remembered standing there blankly in the crowd, waiting for that very moment. I lived a reckless life, indifferent to everything, until I was hired as a healer by a certain magic squad amidst constant berating. I only knew how to blindly follow the orders of some arrogant guy. Those days were so dull. She laughed at herself as she said this. "If you're a healer too, you'll understand one day." Her words reminded him of the group, that this world is full of people not worth saving. The red stone was then handed to her. The cult gave me strength and enlightenment. The more she spoke, the more excited Enrut became. From then on, my life finally started to shine. Kill gripped his dagger tightly and retorted, "I don't know what you've realized, but what you're doing is wrong." He couldn't help but shout, "At this rate, so many people will lose their lives." Enrut waved her hand, blocking the attack, remaining calm. "Even so, it doesn't matter," she whispered the moment she got close, "because the cult says it's fine." Right after that, Enrut swung her hand, slamming him against the wall. A mouthful of blood spewed from his mouth. She walked toward him, step by step, smiling. "So much for justice prevailing, huh?" Kill bowed his head in silence, not answering. He felt like someone so hollow. In his mind, he thought of his loved ones, Master Veronica, and how many people must have died at the hands of this person. Kill gritted his teeth, unwilling to give up. Seeing this, Enrut's expression faltered for a moment. He clutched his injured arm and slowly stood up, shocking her. "You can still stand up." Enrut's eyes widened in horror. Even with such injuries. A surge of energy gathered around his arm, and the wounds healed instantly. Enrut couldn't help but ask, "You healed that wound instantly? What kind of healing power is that at this moment?" Kill held his head, saying in a low voice, "I won't forgive you." He swept his hair back, revealing sharp eyes. "I will make you pay with pain worse than death." Seeing this, Enrut angrily lunged forward. "This time I'll finish you off immediately so you won't have a chance to recover." Kill also swung his fist with immense power. The powerful pressure caused the space itself to tremble. Enrut couldn't block that attack for a moment. Kill's mouth curled up as he taunted, "Is that all out of breath already?" He turned and swung his fist again. "I'm not done with you yet." Enrut's eyes widened, revealing terror. Too fast. In an instant, she took a punch from him. Bright red blood poured incessantly from her nose and mouth. Enrut was sent flying meters away and then lay motionless on the ground. Seeing this, Kill slowly walked over. "Knocked out already. I'll deal with this later." Just then, he suddenly remembered. "Ah, right, Ms. Veronica." In front of him, Veronica was battling Octodora. Her eyes flashed with a cold glint. With one swing of her sword, she severed the beast's tentacles. A powerful surge of energy radiated out. Veronica slowly sheathed her sword right after. The chopped-up pieces of flesh fell immediately. She turned back to him with a smile. "Did you finish up on your end, too?" Veronica glanced into the distance and continued. "That one had high regeneration abilities, so it took some time." In his heart, Kill realized, so the monster was actually the tougher opponent, as expected of Ms. Veronica. He slowly turned his head. They both approached, and he patted Enrut's face lightly. As soon as she opened her eyes, she met Kill's radiant smile. "Now spill everything." He pressed down hard on Enrut, causing her pain before she could even collect her thoughts. A sharp blade was held to her throat. She was about to be buried, yet she remained stubborn. "Don't make such a scary face." Kill just replied coldly, "That depends on you." He bluntly interrogated her. "I have a lot of questions, but what is the cult? What is its goal?" Enrut replied only vaguely, "A believer is not allowed to reveal information to outsiders." More surprisingly, she suddenly grabbed the knife and kept muttering insane words. "Always offer your life to the cult." Then, like she had gone mad, she stabbed herself. "The cult lives forever." This act of suicide stunned Kill. He couldn't believe his eyes. Enrut's eyes rolled back after the agony she just endured. In the eternal realm, she still carried her obsession. I take my own life to protect the secret of the cult. Truly a perfect believer. With this, my soul will be led to the world that Lord Lot longs for. Upon departing, Anruth still wore a satisfied smile. But suddenly, Anruth slowly began to wake up. My mind feels strangely clear. I can't even die in peace. Wait, my wound, it's gone. Anruth felt increasingly strange. Clearly, I stabbed my own throat. The feeling of the cold blade slicing my throat and the warm blood gushing out, that was real. Unexpectedly, Kill affirmed, "You did take your own life. I was surprised you'd do that myself. I underestimated your faith." He smiled provocatively, "But I've already healed you." Anruth couldn't believe it, repeatedly refuting, "That's impossible. I should have died almost instantly." Kill didn't hesitate to explain, "If it's almost, that means you didn't die immediately. I can heal that." Anruth refused to believe it. "That's impossible for a normal healer." Having said that, he immediately shut her down. "I'm not normal. Now. I'm going to become the best healer in the world." He continued his interrogation. "Do you realize that if I can heal someone on the brink of death, that means I can also torture you to that very edge?" Quill said, and Anruth immediately went quiet as if realizing the gravity of the situation. The look in her eyes turned to panic while Quill pressed his advantage with a wicked smile. "Well, are you ready to spill it yet?" Pure terror was plastered all over Anruth's face. She couldn't go on like this. She felt like she had no choice but to talk. But the next second her pupils constricted, as if she were being hypnotized. She was pulled into a mysterious space with a voice constantly whispering in her ear. "Die for it." Anruth's face showed clear distress. Suddenly, tears streamed down her face, and Quill's expression changed rapidly as Anruth began to tremble in pain, her eyes rolling back. Veronica quickly sensed something was wrong. "Get back! Quill, something's not right." Quill quickly released her and stepped back, and in the blink of an eye, her head and limbs completely evaporated. The two standing on the side watched with wide, shocked eyes. Looking closely at the ground, Anruth had turned into a dried-up husk. Quill couldn't believe his eyes and rushed over. "What the?" He immediately tried to heal her. "Wait, don't die." Seeing his effort, Veronica could only look on helplessly. "It's no use." Quill stopped his hands and began to analyze it. Her energy vanished in the blink of an eye. Some kind of curse. And an incredibly powerful one at that. Quill still had many questions. Who was behind this person? Veronica asked him then. "Quill, are you okay?" Quill replied with a hint of regret. "I'm fine, but this guy." That was when he finally realized the situation. "This should have been my chance to get some information. It's my fault for tagging along. I'm sorry." But she had a generous heart and didn't hold a grudge. As long as the students are safe, that's enough. Veronica smiled gently. "Let's head back to the academy." On the way back, Quill kept rambling about how the red stone had been destroyed and they hadn't learned anything. Veronica remained calm and explained. "The red stone makes monsters go berserk. Just knowing that these things exist is a gain in itself. You can't defend yourself against things you don't even know exist." Naturally, he had the same premonition. "That's right, you're right, compared to my past life. I'm definitely making progress. At this rate, surely." Even so, Quill still had too many unanswered questions, but he wondered. Taking this opportunity, Veronica opened up. In the end, she was also happy that she joined the field training. She even revealed a secret. "Actually, I insisted on joining the field training because I was worried about you. Our school is the only one that sends 2 teachers along, right?" Finally, some of Quill's lingering doubts were cleared up. "So that's how it is." So Ms. Veronica only just realized the existence of that thing in this lifetime. It was never enough. He continued to ask, "Thinking back, I always wanted to ask, how did you come up with the idea of using static magic to attack?" Ms. Veronica then told him honestly. She came from a merchant family, perhaps because she had many opportunities to interact with both healers and battle mages, but his thoughts were a bit different. "If you could figure it out with just that, then I feel like magical research should have progressed much further." Veronica was just as surprised. "Is that so?" "Well, I don't know." Suddenly, Veronica remembered something important, but she vaguely felt a sense of familiarity. She felt as if someone had told her the same thing when she was young. While Quill was still deep in thought, they arrived in front of a bakery. Could that person be connected to the cult? Veronica wanted to stop by again. Quill set aside these complicated matters. "Do you want to buy some bread?" Quill's soul seemed to be pulled back after that question. He nodded happily and agreed, "Yes, please." And so the big mysteries still remained. "I've gained new power to avoid destruction. I got scolded for going out without permission." Elsewhere in the room, the atmosphere was strangely silent. Anruth was sitting neatly at the table, but it seemed she had passed away. On her neck were snake-bite marks. Just then another voice echoed, "That diligent one is dead, and now it has found me again." This girl carried a snake with her, her mouth constantly repeating, "I will do it, I will do it." She held the red stone in her hand, looking at it with fascination. If that was the order from the cult? A few days had passed since the battle with the cult. At this moment, Quill and Veronica were sparring. He kept asking about the information from the other day. "Did you find anything out about the cult?" She quickly replied, "Not much. They call themselves a cult, but it seems they haven't made any noticeable moves." Quill expressed his clear regret. "If only I could have gone down to the town to gather information." She firmly stated her stance. Students need a permit to leave the school. Veronica emphasized again, "And a student's duty is to study." Quill smiled confidently. "I know, but I hate just sitting around and waiting. So I came up with an idea." While speaking, he put all his strength into the ball of his foot. Then he accelerated, dodging Veronica's attack. Before she knew it, Quill had approached her from behind. "I was going to find Master Shi the top expert on monsters." What he thought would be easy was easily blocked by Veronica. "So that's your game? You're planning on doing an off-campus study program, but my stance remains the same. I'm pretty sure you need top-tier marks in theory to even sign up for that." As she spoke, she swung her sword, forcing Quill to scramble as he parried. "Are you even qualified for it?" He confidently shoved her back. "Don't you worry about me," Quill started bragging. "My theory score this term is the highest in the entire grade." Hearing that, Veronica lowered her sword and sighed in relief. "Having a top student like you makes me proud, and you've certainly become much more reliable, haven't you?" Even so, he knew his limits. "I'm still trying my best, but I've started to realize just how much you've been going easy on me." "That's good to hear." Just then, Veronica offered a reward. "If that's the case, then it's time for you to choose your core." He looked blank, completely confused. "A core," she analyzed him seriously. "You have the creativity to flexibly turn healing spells into offensive strikes, but if you find your specialty and hone it, your fighting style will become more stable and the variety of your options will shine even brighter." But Quill answered thoughtlessly, "In that case, I'll choose you, Professor Veronica." Veronica stressed the point again. "What I can teach you is magic swordsmanship. Are you really sure about that?" "No need to rush the decision," she said before quickly moving on to other thoughts. "For now, we should go see Master Zia." Finally, it clicked for Quill. "I get it now." Afterward, he began his journey. He had an appointment with Master Z, and the weather was beautiful even this far from town. This trip was turning out better than he expected, a perfect day for off-campus studies. Off-campus programs allow you to learn from experts in the field. At the academy, we usually visit mages active on the front lines, but you can also experience the most advanced fields of research. Thea Zeta is a famous monster researcher. Even in my previous life, his achievements were so great that the kingdom awarded him a medal. The more he thought about it, the more Quill admired him. He really is a scholar of monsters. He lives quite far from populated areas, but Quill was naturally curious. He wondered had he ever been attacked by a monster. Suddenly, Quill sensed danger and looked up. From high above, a cascade of massive boulders was falling like a flood. Quill snapped back to reality. "So there are dangers like this too." He sprinted at full speed, dodging every rock, but suddenly one boulder seemed to lock onto him as a target. As it came hurtling down, Quill quickly channeled all his mana into his palms and made a few quick motions, shattering the boulder into small pieces. Once it was done, he calmly collected himself. But it seemed it wasn't over. He continued to feel something speeding towards him. A throwing dart. Quill successfully caught it. He examined it carefully. An arrow. Right at that moment, two other men approached. Sorry, the black-haired one said, giving a flimsy excuse. "A monster trap just went off by accident." Quill didn't want to deal with it. The lowlife started to walk away. "Accident? I almost died. Do you people have any idea?" But the black-haired guy kept acting like a clown. "You're still alive, aren't you?" The blonde youth seemed more gentle. "We're hunters working around here. People don't usually come through here. We'll be more careful next time." Quill sighed, exhausted, and moved to leave. "As long as you guys learn from your mistakes, it's fine. We're in a hurry, so please don't do that again." But it turned out that was just a facade. The blonde guy started showing his vile nature. "I've learned my lesson." The two planned to play dirty, jumping in to gang up on Quill. "Next time, we'll do it right." But Quill calmly dropped to the ground, dodging their attack. He glanced over, carefully observing. Seeing that everything was in his favor, he gave the two guys a kick, sending them tumbling off the cliff. The two persistent guys desperately grabbed onto the cliff edge to hold on. Quill looked at them with contempt. Their bracelets and rings didn't even fit properly. He didn't need to think much to realize they were clearly stolen goods. Quill's voice went cold as he slowly stepped towards them. Funny, I've actually been thinking about something lately. Whether or not there's an effective way to rehabilitate bad guys. While crushing the blonde guy's jaw, he came up with a new idea. So staring at them with murderous intent, he thought, how about brainwashing? The blonde guy's whole body started to tremble. The black-haired brat, not even worried about himself, piped up again. Stop, Quill declared bluntly, then threw him to the ground. I'm not stopping. Quill's smile now was enough to scare the ghost out of the black-haired guy. Not stopping, I already gave you 2 chances. Saying that, he turned back and grabbed the other guy's jaw. The black-haired guy's whole body started to shake. More importantly, it looked like a living creature was trapped inside the bag those two were carrying.